Let's dive into how this incredible story begins, right on a battlefield where a 10-year war is finally coming to an end. But for the feared necromancer at the center of it all, the end is here. He groans in pain as life slowly slips away. A holy sword is driven straight through his heart, a fatal blow delivered by the hands of the victorious heroes. Bleeding and bruised, the surviving warriors try to catch their breath. Relief washes over them. They actually did it. After 10 long years, they finally cornered and defeated the continent's greatest demon, the Grand Necromancer Archcommand. Impaled and surrounded, Archcommand glares with pure rage. He remembers how everything collapsed in this war that united all allied forces. While the Imperial Army clashed directly against his undead legions, an elite squad secretly infiltrated his fortress to take him out directly. He had anticipated every move, building defenses he believed were completely impenetrable, but it all crumbled into absolute devastating defeat. Now, pay close attention here, because this was all the work of a single knight who completely shattered his defenses. The leader of the Northern Knights, Burkle Rinland, stands before him, declaring that this victory does not belong to him alone. He explains that countless people bled, suffered, and sacrificed absolutely everything. That is why his sword reached him. With a solemn look, Bickle demands Archimonde's surrender for the peace of the continent. But the word peace only infuriates Archimonde. He lets out a roar of absolute rage, utterly rejecting the hero's words. He spits with contempt that those knights are hypocrites who did nothing while the plague wiped out the common people, and now they beg for peace only because they are in danger. Archimonde calls them bastards, worse than dogs in his eyes. With his last ounce of strength, he begins channeling his dark energy, swearing to destroy all of humanity with his own hands. The other heroes panic, terrified he can still channel necromancy even with a holy sword driven straight through his chest. They yell that he is too dangerous and must be finished off immediately before he triggers another massive catastrophe. But Burkle orders them to calm down. He turns to Archimonde, reminding him of the 20 million souls taken by the plague. 20 million people whom Archimonde desecrated, turning them into his massive undead army to wage this very war. Archimonde grits his teeth and tells him not to make him laugh. "Do you really think I don't know that?" His eyes narrow as he exposes a hidden truth. He knows perfectly well that Burkle's own hometown was among those millions. And yeah, I know what you're thinking. This war wasn't about justice, but about pure, unfiltered revenge. Burkle stands in silence, his heart heavy with grief, but then confesses there is only one reason he came here. He doesn't fight for glory or justice, but for the future of the children. This selfless motive leaves the necromancer stunned. He can only manage a confused what? The knight's conviction remains absolutely unshakable. He explains that his choices, hopes, and even his life must be left behind for future generations. In that moment, Archimonde finally understands everything. He sees his own corrupt, hate-filled reflection mirrored in the eyes of this honorable knight. It is like staring directly at the sun after a lifetime in darkness, facing a gaze entirely opposite to his own. Burkle's hand glows with an ultimate power, declaring he does this solely for the sake of their descendants. The last of Archon's strength and his will to fight completely fade. He falls to his knees on bloody snow. With a hollow voice, he asks the knight to end it. His allies shout in alarm as Burkle casts aside the holy sword. He draws a different weapon instead, one that vibrates with a sinister, glowing, purple energy. Burkle points the dark blade at the necromancer's neck, demanding his final words. A faint, knowing smile appears on Archimonde. He warns him that a necromancer does not die easily, and with one swift, clean motion, Burkle severs his head. The heroes erupt in celebration at the fall of their greatest enemy. The war is over. Archimonde is finally dead. Beyond the cheering, the very last thing Archimonde hears is the sickening thud of his own head hitting the ground. His vision fades to pitch black. This was the end of a long war, and the continent's worst threat, or so he thought. Suddenly, he regains consciousness not in the afterlife, but inside a luxurious mansion on a dark, stormy night. Two maids whisper warmly over a crib. One excitedly points out the young master's mouth moving. He struggles to understand what is happening. His mind is in absolute chaos. Where on earth is this? A maid greets him, asking if young Master Clean slept well. They show him a golden mirror reflecting the portrait of a stunning woman they call the Duchess, his mother. The maids try to coax him into saying his very first word, Mama, but his mind, trapped in this tiny body, refuses to cooperate. His new body is completely stiff, and trust me, you and I are going to love watching him struggle to babble his first words. Let's dive into this wild story, where these excited maids actually think this baby is some talking genius. But what comes out of his tiny mouth isn't mama, it's a dark, ancient demonic spell. Guardians of darkness, my servants and soldiers, I, Archimonde, summon you, hear my call. The maids instantly freeze in pure horror, dropping the mirror in absolute shock. As the baby's dark incantation echoes through the entire room, black lightning strikes outside, signaling the chaotic and ridiculous rebirth of this legendary necromancer. But eventually, all that madness settles down. We take a massive 15-year leap through time, landing on a beautiful, sunny day at a grand estate. Several maids blush and whisper excitedly among themselves, completely captivated by the mere presence of someone very special. Firm, confident footsteps echo along the stone path as a handsome young man strolls through the main courtyard. The girls admire his flawless features and that striking silver hair. And there he is, the absolute center of everyone's attention. Archimonde, now reborn as 15-year-old Clean. The maids whisper that he is a living masterpiece, literally carved by the gods themselves. They keep sighing over him, calling him gorgeous, and wondering what he even eats to look so flawless. But Clean couldn't care less about their praise, keeping his usual cold, serious expression. Now watch closely here, because his peaceful stroll gets completely ruined when a loud voice screams, "Found you!" Startled, Clean spins around only to see a bucket of water flying directly over his head. Before he can react, a heavily scarred, muscular man roars, "Begone, evil spirit!" and splashes the entire bucket right on him. This is Priest Garrison Vermin of the Holy Order, and apparently this is just his unique way of saying hello. The swooning maids scramble back in terror. Garrison proudly claims 3 of them were already cursed, and his purification arrived just in time. Dripping wet and with the bucket literally stuck on his head, Clean seethes with rage at how this priest can spout such nonsense with absolute confidence, while Garrison deadpans his insane logic. He firmly believes the soul of the wicked necromancer, Archimonde, resides deep inside of Clean's body, which is why he constantly performs these forced purifications. Our main character tries to scream that he isn't that monster, but Garrison takes that glaring defiance as proof of Archimonde himself, immediately splashing holy water right in his face to finish it. Completely done, Clean wonders if this priest is completely insane. He storms off in a huff, muttering "crazy bastard" over and over, under his breath, in sheer disbelief. But Garrison isn't about to let him walk away that easily. You and I both know this is ridiculous, right? Look at this. The priest dramatically orders his capture, sparking a wild chase. Garrison screams that for his insolence, Clean will be stripped naked and bathed in pure holy water. Clean runs for his life, swearing he isn't Archimonde and wondering if this priest has any humanity left as he flashes back to the past. He thinks about how unbelievably tragic it is that his brand new life turned out to be such a total disaster. He still remembers his death, the face of the hero Burkle burned into his mind, and that bizarre feeling of falling into a new existence. He recalls the massive shock of waking up inside the body of a helpless tiny infant, and of course, that fateful moment when his very first words were a necromancy spell, terrifying everyone and sealing his tragic fate. Because of that stupid mistake, they treated him like a demon and locked him away in a monastery the moment he turned 3. It was in that horrible place where he met a man claiming to be part of the Holy Order, Priest Garrison himself. Clean bitterly remembers that meeting him was the absolute start of his nightmare, being subjected to ridiculous purifications like 24-hour continuous prayer chanting, which basically consisted of the priest screaming holy scriptures directly into his ears until they literally started bleeding. Then there was Garrison's ice-cold garlic bath, a freezing torture invented purely to wash away his supposed scent of darkness. And who could forget the purifying fire show, which was honestly just a direct attempt to burn him alive at the stake? He endured entire years of these incredibly creative tortures, all to purify him, while he begged for someone to save him. Fast forward to the present, 5 years after escaping that absolute hell. We see Klain slumped on the floor, looking completely defeated after his recent, incredibly annoying encounter with Garrison. While wearing a ridiculous cone-shaped party hat right on his head, his personal maid, a young girl named Erin, kneels and prays from the heart, begging for young Master Clean to live proudly as a descendant of heroes and grow up healthy. But Klain has zero patience for prayers. His eye twitches with rage and, sick of everything, he rips the hat off his head, slamming it down with a scream of pure frustration. And that's where we leave things today, with poor Erin holding back tears after seeing her sweet gift tossed aside like trash. Watch closely, Klein is hit with instant guilt. He immediately regrets his little tantrum, imagining her putting her whole heart into knitting it with her tiny hands. So, he apologizes and bends down to pick it up, wanting to make things right. But right as he reaches for it, Erin whispers a terrible truth. It was actually Priest Garrison who knitted the thing. Klein completely freezes, a look of pure horror on his face. And speak of the devil, look who just decided to show up. Garrison peeks through the door, calling out to young Master Klein while wiping away a deeply moved tear of pure happiness. He is absolutely thrilled that Klein is wearing the hat he spent an entire week carefully knitting. Don't blink with a terrifying smile, Klein declares he won't wear it and tears the damn hat to shreds. Garrison's face darkens as he dramatically screams that the evil soul of Archimond has finally awakened. Klein roars right back, demanding his wasted guilt moment return, before slamming the door right in his face. Right then Dunla, the captain of the Red Chariot Knights, arrives and asks if the purification ritual is finally over. Truth be told, Dunn looks pretty skeptical. He points out the rumor of Klein being Archimond is over 10 years old, and the Holy Order already cleared him. Suddenly, a sulking Klein lunges straight at Garrison, grabbing his face in the most hilarious way possible. But Garrison, built like an absolute brick wall, swats him away like a fly while assuring the captain everything is fine. Klein lies defeated on the floor, thinking this crazy bastard ignores him completely but plays the saint when talking to the captain. The boy concludes that this priest is nothing but a sneaky politician. You and I both know this won't end here. Garrison says goodbye with a chillingly sinister look, adding that evil could always resurface. Klein breaks into a cold sweat. This guy is never going to leave him alone. The priest finally turns to leave, but cannot resist annoying him one last time, poking his head back in to wave cheerfully. He reminds him the next ritual is on Friday, demanding he clean himself up to remain absolutely pure. Left alone, Klein catches his breath, completely drained by the massive stress of dealing with that unbearable priest. He collapses onto the couch in total defeat, furiously wondering if it is even legal for a priest to torture people like this. He is fully convinced Garrison is no saint, but rather a muscular monster in disguise. His maid, Erin, approaches with a towel, shyly asking if he is absolutely 100% sure he isn't Archimond. Klein waves his hand dismissively, swearing up and down that he is not, and that he hates that cursed name with a passion. But he is obviously lying, because if he confesses the truth, Garrison's purification rituals would scale up to levels of insane torture, and that is his tragic second life in a nutshell. Ever since he reincarnated, he has had to live under constant, strict surveillance. His true self is a shadow haunting him. Thanks to a stupid baby mistake, a rumor got him locked in a monastery for 7 long years. And just when he thought he was finally free, that wretched priest followed him all the way to the Duke's mansion. The knight, trying to help, mentions that Garrison is a proxy, even though he really does not look the part. The maid asks what that is. Since she is unfamiliar, Dunn explains it is the title given to the strongest warrior in the entire order. He adds that, except for the legendary dukes of House Rinland, a proxy is unbeatable and possesses overwhelming power. Aaron's eyes shine with excitement as he exclaims that the young master's family must be brutally strong. He then turns to Dunn with another question, asking who has been the strongest duke in their entire bloodline. Dunnell ponders it with a smile. He says they are all great, and the 7th current duke is strongest, but Klein interrupts, claiming it is the first. The assistant gets confused, asking if he means the first duke instead of his father, the 7th. He gives an exact number. He asserts with absolute confidence that the first duke is the most powerful of them all. Dunn is surprised by the sheer conviction in his voice, but decides to accept his answer. Aaron chuckles, commenting the young master must love the first duke since he always stares at his portrait, though Klein's look is far from admiration. It is something way more complicated. Dunn casually remarks how incredible it is that 200 years have passed since the first duke founded the family. That number echoes as Klein stares at the portrait. 200 years. Even he finds it hard to believe, but stick around to see how he survives this bizarre reality. The camera pans up a wall filled with portraits showing the entire bloodline. Get ready. Because you and I are diving into the Rinland dynasty, from the 7th Duke all the way to the founder, the first Duke, Berkel Rinland. And talk about the ultimate irony. I, Archimond, the necromancer and terror of the continent, reincarnated as the direct descendant of the very hero who ended my past life. The next morning, he wakes up drenched in cold sweat after reliving that recurring nightmare where the great hero Berkel mercilessly destroys him. Gasping for breath, he clutches the sheets, trying to shake off the lingering terror still gripping him. Trying to calm down, he brushes it off as just a dream and tugs at a lock of his silver hair. That color reminds him of this unfamiliar body he is still getting used to. Suddenly, an imposing figure in the doorway startles him. A deep voice remarks that young Klein talks too much in his sleep. It is none other than Priest Garrison. Garrison smiles arrogantly, asking if he was dreaming about his past glory days as Archimond. Klein curses the priest in his head, reminding himself to play dumb in front of this complete psychopath. He stammers, trying to make up an excuse about being tired lately. But suddenly, a little girl crawls out from under the bed, claiming she heard absolutely everything. She even starts mimicking him, mocking his dramatic screams about destroying the entire continent and wiping everyone out. Check out Garrison's face. You and I can see Klein completely panicking, trying to shut her up and denying everything. But before things get worse, there is a formal knock at the door. It is Butler Vermin. However, Garrison, hearing what Aaron says, ignores the servant completely and snaps, deciding that the young master now needs double the purification. Klein, trust me, on this one, he growls at a crazy priest before we head to the massive Rinland mansion. Vermin drops some news about a sword demonstration that the Duke himself demanded our main character attend. Walking down the grand hallways, he finds this weird. His father has never shown any interest in him before. Along the way, little Aaron spots a sweet treat in his hand and shyly asks if she can have it. The butler immediately scolds her for being so rude and daring to ask the young master for anything, but our lead shrugs it off, stepping in to tell him not to be so harsh with her. He hands over the candy, and she happily enjoys it under Vermin's disapproving glare. Still, he remains curious about this sudden summons. Now pay attention here. Vermin explains the branch families have arrived, instantly ruining our main character's entire day. He knows how they are annoying parasites who only show up to cause trouble. Sure enough, he is greeted by a smug, mocking bunch of relatives looking at him with pure, undisguised hatred. Totally shameless. One of them mocks him loudly, saying he should be called the Great Lord Archimond instead. Another cousin chimes in, sarcastically bringing up the 7 years he spent rotting away in that quiet monastery. These are his cousins on his father's side, a truly hopeless bunch of pests. Then he spots the northern branch crowd, who seem to have only shown up to eat all the free food. And scanning the crowd, he also spots his cousins from the west. You and I both know she's important, a striking girl watching everything with pure boredom, completely different from the rest. One of them whispers in disgust, wondering how someone so weak could belong to the great Rinland name. He completely ignores them and walks right on past, which totally outrages the nobles who shout at him for disrespecting his elders. But our main character knows exactly why these distant relatives dare to act with such extreme insolence. The prestigious Rinland family is falling apart, and the branch families looking down on the direct heir proves it all. Right then, the sword demonstration kicks off right in the middle of the grand, crowded hall. So what do you and I take from this? Wooden swords clash, and the fight is finally on. Dalton, a purple-haired boy, gets shoved backward. Clearly outmatched, he glares at his opponent Dylan, calling him a bastard. Furious, he screams at him to stop holding back and fight for real. But Dan calmly replies that the fight is already over, effortlessly blocking Dalton's clumsy strikes and proving his sheer superiority. His rival, a calm blonde youth, simply smiles. If there is any hope left for this falling family, it all rides on one person. The eldest son, an absolute prodigy, and Klein's half-brother, Dan Rinland. Thanks to him, get ready, because you and I are about to watch a legendary family fall apart. Dalton refuses to lose, roaring that he will win this time. But it is completely useless. He charges in blindly. As Klein watches the duel unfold, everything changes. For the first time in his reincarnated body, he witnesses true swordsmanship. Instantly, his eyes glow with a deep violet light. He is not just watching a simple fight, he is dissecting it. And in that single second, everything shifts. He sees it all with perfect clarity. The footwork, the timing of every step, and even the mana flowing around Dylan. Dylan unleashes a devastating strike, his sword suddenly glowing with a faint blue light. It is the secret technique of the Rinland family, a brutal strike that slams the ground with explosive power. They call it the meteor sword, and Dalton is sent flying. Just like that, the duel is over. Dylan stands victorious, not even breaking a sweat. He glances down at his defeated cousin with a smug, mocking smile. While Chevet warns him about getting too serious, the surrounding nobles stand completely stunned by this terrifying display of raw power. Watch closely, because everyone is whispering, how did he actually pull off the meteor sword in public? This is a brutal warning to the branch families that the main Rinland line is still completely untouchable. Meanwhile, Klein rubs his eyes, trying to process everything. Suddenly, a voice calls out across the hall, "It is Dan!" He asks how long Klein has been standing there, and Klein calmly replies that he just arrived. Dylan comments that had he known his brother was watching, he would have tried harder. Klein observes him, thinking how perfect he is. He is perfect in every way. But then a doubt arises. Why did the branch family show up? To squeeze out more money? Just then, a voice interrupts to congratulate Dylan. It is the 7th leader of the Rinland family, Henkel Rinland. He is my father, and the current head of the family I reincarnated into, and Dylan is his absolute pride and joy. He praises his son for mastering the family technique. Right then, Dunn also makes his appearance. He praises him, saying not even knights of his age would attempt such a complex technique. His talent is truly overwhelming. His genius is undeniable. Dylan, the model's son, humbly smiles, claiming he still needs a lot of practice. Then, Duke Henkel Rinland formally calls out to him. He recites the last words of the first Duke and legendary family hero, Berkel Rinland, declaring that a Knight of Rinland must always stand as the strongest in the entire empire. Placing a hand on his shoulder, he demands him to engrave those words in his heart. Dan bows in deep respect. But you and I can feel the tension shift the moment the Duke turns his eyes toward his other son, Klein. He coldly notes he still feels zero mana inside him. Klein can only bow his head and apologize, deeply humiliated. Dunlil, Klein's personal escort knight, immediately steps in to defend the young master with a quick excuse, suggesting that his lack of mana is simply due to years spent isolated in the monastery. The Duke listens in icy silence. Watching this pathetic scene unfold, the surrounding relatives immediately begin to whisper with pure contempt. The rumors are true, they sneer. The second son has no mana, the complete opposite of his brilliant older brother. They mock the direct line's failure, seeing it as their chance to rise. The Duke coldly remarks there are other paths, but those words bring zero comfort. He sounds like he is discarding a useless child, rather than showing actual support. Klein walks away as the harsh insults echo. He quietly tells himself that their petty words do not affect him. However, what actually makes his blood boil is their utter lack of respect for the legacy of Berkel, the founding hero who literally murdered him in his past life. Klein clenches his fist in silent rage. He literally risked his life to protect their ancestors, yet they behave like this? A dark look crosses his face. He cannot comprehend how the descendants of that legendary hero became so completely rotten to the core. As the Duke and Dylan leave, his brother waves cheerfully, totally oblivious to the heavy tension crushing Klein. Suddenly, Dalton, still reeling from his humiliating defeat, decides to vent his frustration on a much easier target. He mocks Klein mercilessly, calling him a pathetic Rinland who cannot even wield a basic sword. He calls him an absolute disgrace to the bloodline, acting superior despite his own embarrassing defeat. But Klein remains unfazed. He coldly asks if fooling around with girls behind the hall is what he considers protecting the family honor. Dalton's smug look vanishes in an instant, replaced by sheer panic. As he stutters, Klein reminds him that bribes cannot silence rumors. You and I knew he would shut him up. All right, you and I are about to watch Klein completely crush Dalton's foot, stomping him straight to the ground. That's what he gets for running his mouth. Klein glares down at his pathetic cousin, realizing the guy is just taking out his anger after being humiliated by Dylan. Absolutely furious, Dalton screams a curse from the floor. He crosses the line completely, yelling that Klein is just a bastard who never even knew his own mother. The playful mood vanishes instantly. Klein turns around slowly, radiating a murderous vibe as he asks in a chillingly low voice what he just said. Dalton realizes right away that he made a huge mistake. Klein's overwhelming bloodlust is suffocating, making him break out in a cold sweat. For Klein, this is not even about his mother, whom he has never met. It is the blatant disrespect the Branch family shows toward the direct line that truly pushes him over the edge. His eyes begin to glow with a dangerous purple light as pure rage floods his mind. How did the family of the hero who defeated him end up in such a pathetic state? Before Klein tears his cousin to shreds, Dunley steps in, placing himself between them and demanding that Dalton stop. Now pay close attention here. Dunley warns him that no more insults will be tolerated, and Dalton knows he cannot beat a knight. He clicks his tongue in complete annoyance. He shoves Dunley, throwing one last insult to Klein, telling him to be grateful his knight saved him. Before the coward runs off, Dunley watches him with a firm glare. His hand rests firmly on the hilt of his sword. A silent warning to anyone harboring bad intentions. Klein looks at his bodyguard as a brand new plan begins to take shape in his mind. He calls him by name, his voice calm despite the previous rage. Later, the scene shifts to a misty, lonely training ground. Klein has brought Dunley out here to make a special request. Dunley hands him a steel sword, looking quite confused. He asks the young master why he would want a weapon this late at night, especially since he cannot use mana. Klein takes the sword, completely ignoring his question. He gives it a few test swings, trying to remember the exact movements Delon made just a few hours earlier. I know what you're thinking. And yes, Dunley notices that Klein is trying to mimic their secret family technique. Klein tells him to go back inside, needing to check something alone. A deep sense of pity washes over Dunley hearing this. He thinks the young master simply cannot let go of his dream of swordsmanship. He turns to leave, believing it is a hopeless case. Young Master Klein has a body completely devoid of mana, and in this world, that is basically a death sentence for any aspiring knight. It is an unbreakable rule. Dunley knows well that the meteorite sword is a technique relying purely on precise mana control. Even if Klein mimicked the physical movements perfectly, pulling off the actual technique is impossible without that energy. But as Klein stands alone in the clearing, he closes his eyes. The surroundings fade and the memory of Delon's duel becomes crystal clear. He visualizes everything with his unique ability, the precise footwork, and the exact timing of every single step, every push against the ground, the flawless arc of the blade as it cuts clean through the air, and even the invisible flow of mana powering the technique. Suddenly, his eyes snap open, glowing with violet energy as his Demon King powers awaken. Just as Dunley is about to leave, he freezes. A sudden, massive pressure washes over him, so intense it makes his hair stand on end. He spins around quickly with pure disbelief in his eyes. This overwhelming aura. What on earth is happening? He sees Klein's body wrapped in a vortex of violent purple energy. Then, with a powerful roar, Klein swings the sword down, executing the meteorite technique flawlessly, smashing it straight into a giant boulder. The purple energy explodes, completely vaporizing the massive rock into dust. Dunley can only stare in absolute shock. This is impossible. A man with 0 mana has just unleashed his own family's ultimate technique. Dunley stammers, unable to even speak his master's name. A slow, wide grin spreads across Klein's face. He cannot believe it. It actually worked. The next day, little May watches with wide eyes, caught in a mix of confusion and fear. Priest Garrison can only stare in disbelief, a drop of sweat showing just how speechlessly shocked he is. The scene suddenly cuts to a much less epic moment, with Klein's head being shoved face first into a bucket of cold water. Garrison proudly declares that the young master's training is progressing wonderfully. He can now hold his breath underwater for over 1 minute. Auden, the loyal maid, cheers, saying her master is basically a fish. Emerging for air, Klein gasps, looking more like a drowning cat. While Garrison plans a fish tank ritual, you and I will leave Klein completely losing his mind. Get ready, you and I are about to see Klein demand answers for this endless torment. Garrison calmly tells him the ritual is over, laughing as he mentions sensing a very dark energy coming straight from his room. While the servants assist him, Aaron sweetly hands him a towel. Then, Dunley interrupts their bizarre morning routine with an urgent letter. He announces an invitation from Master Dalton has arrived. Still dripping wet and completely confused, Klein asks who that even is. The name does not ring a bell. Dunley reminds him that Dalton is the cousin Delon, humiliated just the other day. Apparently, he wants to apologize for his rudeness back at the training grounds. An apology? Really? Recalling that little weasel's nasty insults, Klein instantly gets suspicious. Opening the letter, he finds it is for a grand hunting tournament. In the background, Erin showcases her unique cleaning style by taking a massive, clumsy faceplant straight onto the floor. Klein narrows his eyes. This so-called apology is nothing but a cheap, pathetic excuse. Dalton is definitely plotting something and just needs a pretext to lure him out. Dunn asks if he will go, and Klein merely smirks. There is absolutely no reason to decline. After all, ever since that night of training, he has found a brand new ace up his sleeve. His gaze drifts toward the sword leaning against the wall, a constant reminder of his massive breakthrough. He replays Delon's sword style in his mind, analyzing every single detail. That was when he realized something incredible about his new body and old powers. Pay close attention here, because we now know he can copy any technique after seeing it just once. Following a brief silence, Dunnell simply says he understands and will go prepare the carriage immediately. But Garrison steps in. Hearing about the hunting competition, he immediately volunteers to accompany the young master on this trip. Klein is not amused at all. He flatly refuses, pointing at the priest while demanding to know what nonsense he is planning now. Then, the priest reminds him of their conversation. He claims he feels a deeply unsettling vibe surrounding today's events, so his mind is completely made up. The carriage sets off for the western forest with the priest hitching a ride. The journey is awful due to the rough, bumpy dirt road. Inside, Aaron gets completely wiped out by severe motion sickness and is now sleeping peacefully right on Garrison's lap. Looking closely at Aaron's incredibly pale face, Klein tells her she should not have come and offers his own pillow. He explains that this harsh western terrain is brutal for beginners. Garrison is left completely speechless by this sudden, small gesture of kindness. He is genuinely moved, tears welling up in his eyes as he thinks about how much the young master has finally matured. Klein snaps back furiously, clarifying the pillow is for Aaron, not him. He then looks out the window, staring distractedly at the scenery. Do you feel that strange vibe too? He notices this place changed completely since his last visit 200 years ago. Back then, it was not a lush forest, but a frozen wasteland covered in snow and the rotting corpses of his enemies. He is amazed by how the land recovered, transforming that ancient ice of the past into a beautiful, vibrant green forest. It is proof of the power held by his old rival, the hero Burkle. Truly fitting for the man who defeated him. Their journey is cut short as Dunn announces their arrival. They halt in front of a massive, opulent mansion belonging to the wealthy Cornwell family. Stepping down, Klein looks around the estate. So this is where that utterly insufferable Dalton lives. He notes that this side branch's mansion is actually more extravagant than the main Rhineland estate, one of the empire's 3 great duchies. All this flashy wealth, just for a childish little hunting game. Klein scoffs at such pure decadence. Suddenly, a gratingly familiar voice calls out, snapping him right out of his thoughts. It is Dalton, looking as smug as ever, flanked by a pack of ravenous, constantly growling hunting hounds. He greets Klein with pure contempt, showing off the estate's high ceilings and thick stone walls. Then, he boasts about building all of this using the very money extorted from Klein's own family, mocking his sheer naivety and ignorance of the real world after being locked away for 7 long years. But Klein does not even listen. His eyes are locked onto the hunting hounds, which are nothing but skin and bones. They are severely malnourished. Klein cuts Dalton's monologue short, coldly asking when this tournament turned into a chat room. Dalton just laughs, calling him impatient. He tells Klein he has prepared something special and demands that he watch closely. With an overly dramatic gesture, he unleashes the hounds, who sprint off like mad. He then begins explaining his sick, twisted game. He scattered fresh meat all over the mountain to serve as ultimate bait. Thanks to their keen sense of smell, the starving beasts catch the scent instantly and start a desperate search for food. As the beasts run wild, Dalton draws his bow. You and I know something brutal is coming. Get ready, because today you and I are about to witness an arrow flying straight, not at a wild boar, but a defenseless dog. It is not a hunt, it is Dalton's sick, cruel massacre. The villain bursts into a maniacal laugh, cruelly celebrating what he considers a highly successful hunt. Just then, little Erin wanders by looking for her young master. only for Dalton to spot her. He recognizes her instantly as Clen's personal maid. He approaches with a predatory look, stroking her head while mocking her worth. With a sick, twisted smirk, he warns that he has a very different task planned for her. But his sick fun is cut short. An iron grip tightly locks onto his wrist, stopping him cold. It is Cleen, who orders Dalton to let her go in a dangerously icy, threatening tone. He delivers a terrifying warning before snapping his arm. Dalton snarls, wrenching himself free from the grip. Shoving Cleen, he barks at him to stop acting tough and mounts his horse with a crazed grin, challenging Cleen to keep up. Before giving chase, Cleen turns to his loyal assistant Dunley with an incredibly serious look. He hands over a mysterious ancient scroll, revealing that he has a clever backup plan. It is a signal magic scroll, a one-time use artifact that alerts him instantly when torn without requiring any mana. Cleen explains the plan, admitting he heavily suspects the priest who insisted on tagging along. He warns Dunley that if Garrison suddenly vanishes, it is absolute proof that everything went south. If that happens, tear the scroll immediately. An emblem will burn on Cleen's hand, alerting him of the danger. With his plan set, Cleen mounts his horse and rides after Dalton, leaving Dunley completely stunned. As the dust settles, the sky turns pitch black, setting the stage for their showdown. Cleen gallops through the western forest, easily tracking his cowardly cousin's trail. He knows he cannot be far. Time is running out for his cousin to escape. Reaching a clearing, he finds Dalton waiting casually, licking his blade amidst the bloody corpses of the slaughtered hounds. The villain mocks him for being late. Cleen dismounts, his eyes turning ice cold as he takes in the gruesome scene. He calmly asks what kind of absolute madness his cousin is plotting. Dead hounds cover the ground from Dalton's sheer cruelty as he stands waiting with a drawn sword and a sick smile. He proudly announces that this is the final act of their little hunting competition. Pay close attention right here, because under the moon, Dalton reveals his true intentions by declaring Cleen as his final prey. Dalton cackles as he details his plan to chop off Cleen's head, hand it over to Delan, and prove once and for all that the Rinlands are just a joke, an empty, powerless shell. Suddenly, a group of armed mercenaries emerges from the shadows, surrounding Cleen completely. Dalton brags that without Cleen, the duchy falls to his branch. Archers aim their arrows straight at him. Dalton barks at him to curse his own foolish family. He grins, imagining the announcement that the young master became dog food, but Cleen's cold gaze drifts far away. He displays zero fear, only remembering Burkle's words about fighting for the future of their descendants. A slow, knowing smile slowly begins to creep onto his lips. And here's the twist you and I never saw coming. Cleen bursts into a laugh so crazed it freezes the air. Dalton stammers, demanding to know if he has lost his mind and why he is laughing, facing death. Cleen covers his face as his wild laughter echoes through the forest like he just heard the funniest joke. He finally calms down, revealing eyes that burn with a dangerous, icy fire. He explains that it is hilarious watching an arrogant brat who has no clue who he is messing with. Dalton's courage evaporates, replaced by creeping dread. Cleen's eyes glow a fierce crimson as an ancient voice echoes. He reveals that this entire family and their land were built on the sacrifice of his past life. Yet Dalton dares to mock him. A massive vortex of turquoise energy erupts from Cleen with terrifying power. Dalton screams in absolute terror, utterly unable to comprehend what is happening. He knows Cleen has zero mana, so how is this possible? Cleen calmly corrects the terrified boy. It isn't magic. His thugs panic under the pressure as Dalton realizes the truth. Trust me, you and I need to see what comes next. Wait, did Cleen just say magic? Get ready, because what happens next is going to blow our minds. I summon the evil spirits buried by time to awaken. I shall raise them and bring them back into the light. From this very moment, under my name, I command you once more." The ground shakes and cracks, glowing turquoise as skeletal hands claw out of the dirt. Dalton's mind completely shatters as he recognizes that dreaded name. He screams desperately into the night, "Archimonde, an entire legion of skeletal warriors!" The legendary Archimonde rises from the earth, hollow sockets glowing with red fire as they encircle their new master. With a smirk of pure, triumphant malice, Klein delivers his final order to unleash those resentful souls. Devour them all. Suddenly, a dark memory resurfaces, a past battlefield covered in skulls. 200 long years have passed since those days, but even after 2 centuries, the feeling remains, and those spectral hands still reach for him. Those voices, crying out his name. A nostalgic sensation, a connection to the fallen, and the echo of countless battles flooding his soul with memories. He clenches his fist, embracing that familiar dark energy. The power he once mastered feels as natural as breathing. Dalton is completely losing his mind. I know what you're thinking. This seems impossible, but we're watching it happen. Standing before him is Klein, no longer a helpless young master, but the commander of the undead army, the legendary Archimonde. With a cold, calm smile, Klein confirms the boy's worst nightmare. Yes, he was once called by that name. Dalton's thugs can't believe their ears. They thought Archimonde was just an old myth told to scare children. They stare at the silent army of skeletons, struggling to process the impossible scene right in front of them. What on earth are these things? An undead warrior snaps its head, hollow sockets glowing creepily, sending a cold shiver down their spines. Dalton can only stare in absolute silence, his face frozen in pure shock, and his mind completely paralyzed. But the mercenaries' fear quickly turns into foolish bravery. They start laughing at the skeletons, calling them mere bags of bones. Klein remains silent, watching them like someone listening to the mindless rambling of ignorant kids. Their mocking doesn't even bother him. Dalton, trying to regain his composure, dismisses the skeletons as pure trash. One of his men nods, bragging about crushing hundreds of them during their past missions, though he admits these look a bit different. The cocky thugs joke about taking bones as souvenirs, laughing loudly in the woods. Dalton points ahead, ordering his men to clear the path by wiping out the skeletons first. His archers obey, pulling back their bowstrings, ready to unleash a deadly rain of arrows. Pay close attention here. While they aim, a heavy crossbowman smiles, feeling totally confident he can pierce whatever Klein summons. With a final shout from Dalton, the men release a volley of arrows and bolts directly at Klein. The arrows are only inches from his face, a lethal cloud about to pierce him completely, but they never touch him. The volley stops dead in its tracks, hitting a completely invisible barrier. Dalton sneers, thinking he won, arrogantly claiming that the poor fool must already be torn to shreds. But as the dust clears, his laughter dies instantly. His eyes widen in complete and utter disbelief. The entire attack was blocked effortlessly, not by a magic barrier, but by a massive dark shield. The skeletal warriors hold the massive shield protecting their master, forming a completely impenetrable wall alongside the others. Klein smiles. It has been 200 years, so he isn't surprised that no one recognizes his soldiers. Dalton's men descend into absolute panic, shouting in confusion, demanding to know where those shields came from, swearing that the skeletons didn't have them a second ago. Klein mockingly tells them they would be right if these were ordinary skeletons. Then, with an icy glare, he reveals the terrifying truth. These skeletons are different. Dalton's face twists in sheer, unadulterated horror. Trust me, you and I are about to watch this fool realize he provoked a legendary monster. Klein speaks to the memory of Burl, telling him to watch closely, then orders his legion to break defense. He remembers Burkle, who sacrificed everything for the North. These very men insulted and trampled. Clenching his fist, he prepares to show them exactly how he crushes those who dare disrespect his legacy. Charge! the Legion surges forward, marking the brutal beginning of an absolute, legendary bloodbath. Dalton trembles in absolute terror as an entire army of skeletons charges forward at terrifying speed. Skeletons do not run. This is impossible. It defies all logic and common sense. His once arrogant mercenaries are plunged into absolute chaos. No orders work. The tide of bones crushes them as the slaughter begins. The first victim falls. A bone sword pierces his chest, silencing his life with a choked gasp. This isn't a battle, it's a complete massacre. Archon's warriors tear through the mercenaries. Their superhuman strength humbles the soldiers, driving Dalton into a state of absolute panic. Now watch closely, because Klein is about to introduce a deadly new instrument to this chaotic symphony. With a whispered command, Klein orders a second group of crossbowmen to surround them. Up in the treetops, Dalton's archers watch in confusion as shadows move in right beside them. And then, they see them. More skeletons, wearing black capes and wielding massive bone crossbows. Terrified mercenaries scream warnings about the ranged attackers. Their last hope of survival crumbles as they beg to flee, right before hearing the cold order to fire. Without hesitation, Klein seals their tragic fate, releasing a second lethal volley that rips through the forest. There is no escape. A rain of projectiles falls from the sky, piercing the terrified crowd. Dalton roars in rage, cursing this madness. These aren't the weak, brainless skeletons he used to fight. They are completely different. Fueled by adrenaline, Dalton screams at his men to drop bows and fight close range, desperate to regain control. But his orders are completely lost amidst the deafening roar of battle and pure panic. Nobody hears him. Left entirely alone, Dalton desperately strikes at the nearest undead soldier. With a clean, surprising slash, he decapitates the skeleton. For a fleeting second, he believes victory is finally his. Letting out a psychopathic laugh, he screams that it worked, ordering everyone to aim for the head. However, his laughter instantly dies when the headless skeleton swings its sword in a brutal counterattack. Absolute terror washes over Dalton's face. His brain simply cannot process what he is seeing. Klein smiles, enjoying the lesson. Most fools believe that decapitating a skeleton is enough to destroy it forever. I know what you're thinking, but that headless body rises to prove him completely wrong. Right before Dalton's horrified eyes, the skeleton casually picks up its own head from the dirt. Dark energy binds its bones together as its eyes flare with a sinister orange glow, leaving Dalton speechless. He stammers, unable to believe a monster can put itself back together. Klein silently reveals the truth. These are spirit bodies summoned with high-level magic that won't die easily, the Archcommander's secret to conquering the continent. The few surviving mercenaries tremble, whispering in utter horror. What kind of demons are they fighting? Why do they keep rising? Klein knows that with his currently weak body, 11 soldiers is his absolute limit. But looking at the terrified fools trembling right before him, he knows it is more than enough. The remaining mercenaries sob in pure panic, losing all will to fight as the sounds of battle fade into the night. Far away from the bloodshed, the scene shifts to a peaceful night at a luxurious mansion with a beautiful fountain. Priest Garrison shares old stories with Aaron. He tells a tale about the young master's monastery days, making Aaron laugh, finding it absolutely hilarious. He smiles, seeing how much she adores the young master. Cheeks stuffed with cookies, Aaron happily praises him as wonderful. She calls him kind and sweet, a claim that couldn't be further from the brutal reality. While a skeleton brutally impales another man back in the woods, she happily brags that he shared his cookies. So, what do you and I make of this warmest master? Back in the dark forest, Dalton is cornered. He swings his sword in desperation, shattering another bony head, though he knows deep down it is utterly useless. Come along as dark magic instantly stitches these shattered pieces back together. Gritting his teeth in pure fury, he curses those damn bones. He has to stop them from regenerating. Suddenly, it all clicks. The secret is not the monsters, but the summoner. Eliminate Klein, and they all fall. Ignoring the relentless undead, he charges forward, gathering every last bit of his remaining strength. He screams Klein's name, demanding he stop playing dead, and raises his sword. Determined to end this nightmare, he swings down with all his remaining might, aiming for his head but do not blink, because his eye suddenly snaps open. Get ready, because you and I are about to watch his eyes glow with a sinister purple energy as his unique skill activates, letting him copy any technique. Dalton completely freezes, his eyes wide with shock. He instantly recognizes that energy and stance. It is the ultimate secret art of the Rinland family, the Meteor Sword. With perfect precision, Klein copies the move and unleashes a devastating slash. Dalton can only stutter in utter confusion, unable to process how his weak cousin pulled this off. Eyes gleaming, Klein steps closer and warns his cousin that a peaceful death is a luxury he simply won't get. Judgment, he proclaims with terrifying absolute finality, begins right now. With one last painful gasp, Dalton's body collapses onto the forest floor. Klein quietly notes that his cousin actually had a point. The quickest way to defeat a necromancer is by killing the summoner. That exact flaw led to the original Archimonde's downfall. The magical power coursing through Klein's veins is massive, yet he carries that very same fatal flaw. If the user dies, the army crumbles. Ironically, what shields Klein from this weakness is his hero power. He pauses, reflecting on the sheer poetry of it all. The blood of his enemies and his own awakening only made him stronger. He fully embraces his new identity as Klein Rinland. Let's be honest. Gasping on the ground, Dalton doesn't understand a single word Klein is saying. His terrified eyes search for answers, desperately trying to decode those mysterious words, but his consciousness completely fades away. Staring at the carnage, Klein makes a silent vow to the hero Burkle. He swears to look forward and rebuild his fallen family bloody piece by bloody piece. Suddenly, Dalton's eyes snap wide open. A ragged groan escapes his lips as he abruptly regains consciousness. He finds himself trapped in a pitch-black, suffocating void. Enshrouded in darkness, he tries to move but feels cold metal biting into his wrists. Looking down, he realizes his ankles are chained too. Completely pinned down, the darkness retreats to reveal his new prison, a terrifying chair covered in wicked spikes. An icy dread washes over him as he desperately tries to figure out what kind of hell he's been thrown into. A calm voice cuts through his panic, noting he's finally awake. Dalton looks up to see a massive, looming silhouette standing before him. That mysterious figure is none other than the legendary necromancer, Archimon. He explains that Dalton died, and is now in the afterlife, a world crafted by Archimon himself. Dalton can only stare in complete disbelief. Archimon's afterlife? The entire concept is so absurd his mind can't even process it. Archimon confirms it. With the icy tone of a merciless judge, he begins reading off Dalton's earthly sins. He reminds him of how he starved and tortured dogs for fun. He called it hunting, but it was just pure sadistic cruelty. Taking pleasure in firing arrows at those defenseless creatures, Archimon recalls the mad grin on Dalton's face during his cruel acts, a twisted expression forever etched into this gloomy purgatory. Pay close attention. Dalton finally reacts, screaming that it's all lies and demanding his immediate release. But as he yells, his mind pieces things together, and a horrifying truth hits him. He instantly shuts up, his eyes widening in a fresh wave of absolute panic. He vividly remembers Klein's blade piercing through him and his own final, dying breath. Seeing his body completely uninjured now, his blood runs absolutely cold. If he died, why is he unharmed? Archimon reveals the chilling truth. Dalton is already dead. What lives on is merely his karma, a chance to feel the exact agony he inflicted on others. As Dalton desperately keeps denying everything, Archimon coldly states that his opinion doesn't matter anymore. His hand glows with a threatening blue energy. The time to pay for his sins has come. Right behind Archimonde, dozens of spectral hounds emerge from the shadows, their eyes burning with a terrifying light of pure vengeance. These are the souls of the dogs Dalton tortured in life. Dalton's face goes completely pale with horror. Paralyzed by raw fear, he's trapped in the spiked chair as the ghosts of his victims close in. Archimonde commands him to listen closely to the howling of the lives he so ruthlessly snuffed out. With a unified roar, the pack lunges at the helpless Dalton to claim their revenge. As fangs and claws tear his soul apart, Archimonde delivers one last icy message. Dalton must remember that this hell is a nightmare entirely of his own making. His agonizing screams echo through the void, a symphony of absolute divine justice. His desperate pleas fall on deaf ears, because in this court, there is no room left for mercy. And just like that, we watch a single tear fall as his mind completely shatters from 1,000 times his own cruelty. All right, you and I are jumping back into the real world, where Dalton's lifeless body lies in the woods with foaming lips. The judgment is over. Klein stares in absolute silence. The chaos has finally faded, leaving the forest completely quiet again. Suddenly, a gut-wrenching screech from one of his skeleton soldiers snaps Klein right back to reality. Klein looks at his loyal servant. He followed every order perfectly, and now it is time to reward that devotion. With a single gesture, he breaks the curse binding the skeleton's soul, granting him absolute freedom at last. The warrior begins to glow, dissolving into beautiful particles of bright turquoise light. Klein watches the soul finally rest in peace as its essence scatters into the cold night wind. He believes true death only happens when your bones are shattered forever. It makes him deeply reflect on his own ultimate destiny. If that is the absolute end, then why did he, Archimonde, return to life? What is his true purpose here? Now pay attention here. A mysterious hooded figure steps from the shadows, shocked to see young Master Klein using necromancy. Klein spins around instantly, raising his guard. Who is this guy, and how much did he see? Klein demands his identity, but the stranger calmly replies that it does not matter. Since Klein will not remember him anyway, a swirling vortex of green energy erupts from the stranger's hand. The eerie power sweeps across the battlefield, sinking straight into the corpses of the mercenaries Dalton hired. One by one, the eyes of the dead snap open, glowing with a creepy, supernatural green light. With stiff, unnatural movements, the fallen mercenaries begin to rise. Klein's eyes widen in shock as he recognizes this terrifying spell. It is the art of corpse reanimation. He realizes this mysterious intruder is a necromancer. The stranger smirks wickedly, noting that even if Dalton was a failure, his men make perfect puppets. The scene shifts instantly from the bloody forest to the elegant Rhinland manor. Arin calls out to Dunley because Priest Garrison is sharing a funny story about Klein's childhood, but Dunley is not laughing. He ignores her completely, his face grim and his mind consumed by deep worry. His eyes are locked onto an old parchment. Klein gave him a signal scroll reserved strictly for the worst emergencies. Dunley's anxiety spikes. 3 long hours have passed since Klein and his cousin Dalton entered the woods, and there is still zero news. Refusing to wait even another second, Dunlull prepares to leave immediately, but 2 guards block him. They try stalling, claiming the hunt is still going, but he is not buying it. You feel that tension too, right? His eyes narrow with deep suspicion as he realizes the truth. The emblem on their armor is not Rhinland's, it is the Conwell bull. They are not allies. They are Dalton's men. In an ice-cold voice, Dunley reminds them who he is, the commander of Rhinland's Night Order and Klein's personal guard. With a gaze sharp enough to cut steel, he warns them that if they block his path again, he will not hesitate. The 2 guards freeze in absolute terror. Realizing they completely underestimated this powerful warrior, Dunley turns back to Aaron, his voice softening slightly. He orders her to return to the manor immediately with the priest, where she will be safe. Aaron looks at him with absolute confusion and worry, but then shares some chilling news: the priest has completely vanished, without a trace. He left suddenly without saying a word, looking incredibly serious. Dunley completely freezes. He recalls Klein's warning that the priest was highly suspicious, and his disappearance meant serious trouble. Cursing under his breath, he mounts his horse. The pieces of the puzzle instantly fall into place, revealing a terrible truth. This whole hunt was a massive ambush. Without hesitating for a single second, Dunley tears the signal scroll with his teeth to trigger its magic. He spurs his horse into a desperate gallop toward the woods, certain his young master is in deadly danger, and he is right. Meanwhile, deep in the forest, Klein finds himself cornered by a deadly army of the undead. Worst of all, his magical energy is completely drained after his brutal life-or-death battle against Dalton, leaving him unable to use his own necromancy. Sweat drips down his forehead, knowing he cannot survive long against this massive undead horde. Knowing victory is within reach, the mysterious necromancer points commandingly at Klein. He barks a chilling order to his puppets: kill young Klein. The zombies swarm forward like a tide of death, but as they close in, Klein just smirks. Trust me, you and I both know this is far from over. The glowing magic of the signal flare blazes on his hand as he mocks his enemy. Come along with me, and let's watch how this guy thinks he's hot stuff just for controlling corpses. Ridiculous. With a cold glare, Klein sends a very simple message to the hooded figure. You're completely finished. The enemy necromancer can only stare in total disbelief. What kind of power is this? Where is it coming from? Before he can even process it, a blinding, roaring pillar of golden light completely engulfs the entire battlefield. This isn't dark magic, it is a holy purge. The reanimated corpses are instantly incinerated, turning to ash under holy flames. Right there, the source of this incredible power is finally revealed. It's Father Garrison. Though he doesn't look like a humble priest, but a battle-hardened inquisitor, he begins to pray, calling upon the light to grant eternal rest to the dead. As the light fades, Garrison's imposing figure dominates the scene. The hooded necromancer is left in absolute shock. He demands to know this intruder's identity. The man turns around and introduces himself as Garrison Vermin. An executioner of the Holy Order has arrived to judge the darkness. The necromancer can't believe it, an executioner. Now pay attention here, because these executioners are 3 living weapons who serve as the personal executioners of the Pope himself. They are, without a doubt, the most powerful military force in the entire order. Legends spoken of only in whispers. Each executioner is a one-man army, capable of wiping out an entire fortress, and one of them, the strongest in hand-to-hand combat, is standing right in front of Klein. The enemy can only shield his face from the holy shockwave. Klein watches in awe at the arrival of this unexpected, terrifying ally. Garrison smiles with absolute confidence, telling the young master not to worry because he is finally here. The undead, controlled by dark magic, keep shuffling forward, totally unaware they are walking straight into a holy meat grinder. The zombies roar with fury, their glowing eyes filled with malice, but it does nothing against this emissary of divine wrath. Garrison uses his holy book, not to preach, but to smash. He crushes a zombie's face with the word of God. He moves like a storm of holy light and devastating blows, ripping through the undead horde like paper. His eyes glow with divine rage as he declares Judgment Day for the sinners. He orders them to beg for their lives, and in return, he will give them a baptism of fire. He promises to cleanse their sins, instantly delivering on it by shattering a zombie's skull with a holy infused punch. The undead charge desperately to surround him. But watch closely here. Garrison plants his feet and lunges forward with brutal strength. With fists glowing with divine power, he meets that wave of death head-on. Heads of the dead go flying in a second. With a cold glare, he makes it clear this is mercy and judgment. The enemy necromancer watches in horror. This is insane. Why is a holy executioner even here? Looking around, he sees his entire army of the dead annihilated in seconds by a single man. The situation didn't just turn around, it was completely destroyed and reduced to ashes. Panic takes over. He screams furiously that this wasn't part of the plan and tries to flee, but escaping is no longer an option. A voice calmly asks him where he thinks he's going, and turning around, the necromancer sees Garrison lifting him by the head with one hand. He is trapped. The necromancer lets out a piercing scream, face twisted in pure terror. Garrison looks down at this pathetic creature with utter contempt. He coldly informs him that it isn't over yet. He hasn't even finished saying his prayer. Tears of blood and panic stream from his eyes as Garrison tells him to be grateful for the judgment he's about to receive. In the name of the light, Garrison tightens his grip, exploding the head in a shower of blood. An eyeball even pops clean out of its socket. Klein watches this divine beatdown in absolute disbelief. A drop of cold sweat rolls down his temple. Threat eliminated, Garrison calmly walks over to Klein. Klein looks up at the priest, a clear flash of unease flickering in his eyes. Garrison reaches out his hand, still stained with the dark blood of the monsters he just destroyed, and grips Klein's shoulder, making him flinch. Garrison smiles, explaining he sensed the trace of necromancy, and immediately rushed to the scene. His gaze sharpens, locking onto Klein with an incredibly unsettling intensity. That powerful dark energy he felt didn't seem to belong to the defeated enemy. Klein's blood runs cold as he senses his bloodlust. One wrong move, and he's dead. And that's where we leave it. Trust me, you'll want to see what happens when that mysterious rider screams his name. All right, you and I are back right when Dunnell, Klein's loyal servant, arrives to save the day. Garrison's deadly grip loosens just a bit as both he and Klein turn toward the sudden noise. With the tension finally breaking, the immense strain of using his dark powers hits Klein all at once. Blood spills from his lips as his exhausted body finally begins to give out. Seeing his young master stagger, Dunn leaps off his horse and dashes across the bloody battlefield. He catches Klein just in time before the boy collapses completely unconscious. Staring at the horrific carnage and his master's condition, he frantically asks, "What the hell happened?" Klein weakly tells him to shut up since his legs are useless. But Dunnell has one urgent question: where is Lord Dalton? With a deadpan expression, Klein delivers a chillingly simple response: he killed him. We skip forward to a grand mansion, where it seems Klein's extreme actions have landed him in some seriously hot water. Now, pay attention here inside the main hall. A furious outburst ignites a tense debate over Klein's accusations. This is Earl Dellen Conwell, the grieving father of the deceased Dalton. The nobleman is absolutely beside himself, refusing to believe his son committed any crime while furiously defending his family honor before the Council of Nobles. He insists it is impossible for his son, a proud knight, to be a vile murderer, and claims Klein is framing him. Presiding over the room is Klein's own father, Duke Henkel Rinland. Calmly, the Duke states that despite intense interrogation, Klein hasn't changed his story even a single time. And then he presents the first piece of evidence, a document proving there's more to this story than the Earl admits. It is a sealed Conwell record, proving 20 private mercenaries were dispatched right when Klein and Dalton first went missing. Clearly, Dalton was plotting something extremely shady. The Earl breaks into a cold sweat, shocked they were so incredibly careless. He curses his servants for leaving a paper trail, but refuses to back down, completely shifting his strategy before the entire court. He argues that Dalton's alleged plot makes absolutely no sense, and other nobles begin whispering in agreement. They point out that Dalton was a brilliant knight, whereas Klein is notoriously useless with a sword. I know what you're thinking, how did he win without magic? Well, the Earl instantly exploits this exact doubt. If it gets out that his son tried to assassinate a direct heir, his entire family legacy is ruined forever. So, with a nasty smirk, he decides to flip the script and launch an aggressive counteroffensive. If he can't save his son's reputation, he'll tear down Klein's credibility once and for all. He launches a vicious personal attack, bringing up Klein's mother, Archduchess Claire, whose life was plagued by bizarre rumors. Henkel glares at him with pure hatred, warning him to watch his mouth, but the Earl keeps spitting poison. He highlights Klein's childhood, back when the boy ran around claiming he was the legendary Archimonde. Why believe the delusions of a certified madman over the word of his honorable knight's son? But before he can strike the final blow, a calm voice interrupts him, freezing the Earl in absolute shock. All eyes dart into the entrance as Klein walks in wearing a sharp suit, completely unfazed by the accusations. He coldly notes he has been listening to the Earl's garbage and begins laying out the actual truth. Dalton hired mercenaries to assassinate him, and he merely defended himself by putting the boy down. He explains that a mysterious assailant turned them into undead before Father Garrison of the Holy Order rescued him, leaving the stuttering Earl to desperately scream that it is all lies. A dangerous grin creeps onto Klein's face. He poses one simple question: if that is a lie, is he not Archimonde either? The Earl stumbles back, grabbing his head as if struck by raw mental pressure. Klein made a heavy vow when he killed Dalton. He will rebuild the family that rose from his own demise, and he won't let any vile scum trash his glorious legacy. But just as Klein prepares for his next move, a massive boom echoes at the main doors, crashing the trial once again. The grand doors swing wide open, revealing a blinding light. A major new ally steps onto the scene, Commander Leah of the Holy Blue Spear Knights, flanked by two of her troops. Klein recognizes her instantly, remembering her presence from the earlier sword demonstration. But what is she doing here? The nobles begin muttering, wondering what business a Falvern Order commander has in their courtroom. Duke Henkel answers for her, stating he authorized her presence. And as she uncloaks, you and I are left with Leah's razor-sharp gaze scanning the entire room. Let us dive in and watch as her sharp gaze locks onto Klein, freezing the entire room. Leah calmly asks to speak with Klein alone, leaving our main character completely thrown off and searching for answers. Duke Henkel hesitates for a brief second before giving his permission, warning them not to take too long. Klein reluctantly agrees, while silently complaining about how annoying knights are, but then he suddenly stops. This is no setback, but a massive opportunity, and he quickly analyzes the situation. There are only three options here: she wants to verify something, suspects him, or plans to test him, but, honestly, he does not care. He has already made up his mind, and will not take a single step back, so he follows her out, his mind racing. No matter if it is the Fyvern family or someone else, he will use this moment to his advantage. A servant guides them to a private room, and the heavy doors slowly shut behind them. Once they are alone, Leah's attitude completely shifts as she takes a firm step forward, instantly closing the distance between them. She parts her lips, leaning in incredibly close to whisper softly, locking her intense, piercing gaze directly onto his. Then, in a move nobody expected, least of all Klein, she slams her hand against the wall, trapping him with her arm and leg. Their faces are inches apart. Pay close attention here. Klein is sweating from the pure shock, while a dead serious Leah asks if she can touch him. She is Leah Wren Paul Weaver, eldest daughter of one of the three great duchies, a master of the spear, and commander of the Blue Sacred Spear Knights. In short, she is an absolute powerhouse, and we are about to see just. During a monster suppression mission in the Western Forest, she stands entirely alone against hordes of vicious orcs. They surround her from all sides with axes raised, but Leah does not even flinch, standing firm against a savage army. And with a single flash of her spear, the massacre begins. She moves like a blue flash, obliterating the frontline wave, and when the dust finally clears, she is the only one left standing. All on her own, she completely destroyed an entire army of elite monsters. So if a warrior this terrifying demands answers, you and I had better just listen. Back in the present, she glares at Klein and orders him to follow her immediately, leaving our main character completely frozen by her cold attitude. As they walk, she harshly warns him not to act friendly, reminding him they are not real family. Rejected as a cousin before even speaking, Klein recalls that his aunt is the second wife of Duke Paul Wyvern, making Leah his cousin. It looks like a very close family bond on paper, but Klein knows Leah is actually the daughter of the Duke's first wife. Biologically speaking, they do not share a single drop of blood, making them complete strangers. Once inside the room, Leah declares that what she is about to do is purely out of her own personal curiosity. Klein has no idea what is coming when suddenly, just like in a romance novel, she pins him against the wall. With their faces just millimeters apart, Klein breaks into a cold sweat as she seriously whispers a highly unusual question. She asks for permission to touch him, and a panicked Klein screams, asking what on earth she means so suddenly. With no time wasted, she demands his hand, leaving us dying to see what happens next. Let's dive in. She grabs his hand before he can protest, carefully checking and noticing his skin is extremely soft, completely free of any scars. It feels like a baby's hand, she thinks. Klein is panicking and completely confused, not understanding why this incredibly dangerous woman is so desperately obsessed with holding his hand. Leah explains her logic, claiming that even if trained swordsmen lack visible calluses, their hands are never truly soft. Gripping a hilt toughens very specific areas like the index finger base or thumb tendon, proving that hands never lie. With her test finished, she glares straight at him and bluntly asks if he has ever held a sword. Watch closely here. Leah pushes the issue, because just looking at his hands reveals absolutely no trace of sword training. So how did he defeat Dalton and 20 mercenaries? Her mind can only find one logical explanation. Did he use some other strange power? But before she can finish that thought, Klein shoves her back, breaking the intense tension. He is completely done with her little games, deciding to strike back with a mocking smirk plastered on his face. He sarcastically asks her if she is going to accuse him of being Archimonde next. This catches her off guard, but Klein realizes this is not just curiosity. She is actively testing him in a dangerous verbal battleground. And as you and I know, silence speaks volumes. Welcome back. Let's dive in and watch our main character try to act tough in front of her. Brimming with absolute confidence, he smirks and asks if she really doubts him. Leah just scoffs. Him, Archimonde? To her, it is a ridiculous, impossible joke. Right then, she hits him with a verbal slap Klein never saw coming. She looks him up and down, calling him a brat. Yeah, a brat. Klein's whole tough guy act instantly shatters. He expected wild accusations, threats, or a fight. Not this. He stammers, hoping he misheard, but her icy glare confirms it. Yep, she called him a brat, repeating it without hesitation. Immediately, she starts roasting him without any mercy. He is too small to be Archimonde, poorly proportioned, and his weak voice and physique carry zero presence. The roast is relentless, reducing him to a mere child. The emotional damage is so bad his soul almost escapes. Leah finishes her critique, claiming he is no swordsman, let alone Archimonde, but then drops an absolute bombshell. If a weakling with zero power like him actually beats a knight, she will give him a kiss. Klein stands there frozen, processing this insane offer. A kiss? For real? His brain completely short-circuits. He cannot think straight, wondering if this is some bizarre political game or just a straight-up bribe. After successfully confusing and thoroughly roasting him, Leah turns around, saying they will be late for the meeting. But she stops by the balcony, staring into the sunset, and leaves one final, highly mysterious comment. Archimonde would never do that. She leaves him baffled. Pay close attention here, because what is it he would never do? She walks off, leaving him utterly confused. The two finally head back to the main hall, wrapping up their intense, bizarre conversation. The nobles are waiting. Walking back, Klein analyzes his situation and admits he got way too cocky. His reputation as a useless troublemaker locked up for 7 years precedes him. Naturally, nobody will believe he acted in self-defense. They only see a troublemaker. His father, Duke Hankel, asks what they discussed, but Klein goes straight to the point. Instead of answering, he suddenly draws his sword, shocking everyone in the room, especially Leah. With a violent swing, he drives the blade deep into the floor. The loud clash echoes through the hall. The nobles freeze in sheer disbelief at such an incredibly disrespectful act. The tip of his blade points directly at Count Dulcan. Klein announces that since they doubt him, he will prove his innocence himself. He declares they should settle this like men, northern style. He challenges the Count to a trial by combat. The Count can only stare back in absolute terror. He cannot believe his ears. In case you didn't know, trial by combat is the North's brutal way of settling cases without a verdict. There are no limits on weapons or skills. It is a lawless duel to the death. The outcome decides the official verdict for everyone. A brutal but effective way to end disputes. Count Conwell looks like he has seen a ghost after hearing this. He stammers in total shock, demanding to know why Klein is bringing back such an ancient, drastic tradition. Klein explains his reasoning with terrifying calm, reminding the Count that he tried to frame him even though Dalton attacked first. And during that process, you insulted both me and my mother. Before the Count can react, Klein cuts him off with a sharp gaze, demanding he make his choice right now. After all, he would not want to keep the audience waiting. Up on the balcony, the nobles are loving this drama. Whispers spread through the crowd. It has been ages since the last trial by combat, and everyone wants some real action. The pressure suffocates the sweating Count, and just as tension peaks, Duke Hankel steps in with a dead serious expression. He declares that a sacred tradition handed down from the very first generation can never be ignored. Wielding his full authority as the head of the house, the Duke guarantees the duel will settle the verdict. In a genius move, he completely throws out all previous evidence. Suddenly, the Count's fear vanishes as he spots a golden opportunity. If the evidence is gone and they fight to the death, this isn't a threat. It is the perfect chance to legally kill the useless son. A sinister grin creeps onto the Count's face. He fakes concern, mocking Klein by asking if the young master will be fine with 0 mana, saying he will send a knight instead. But Klein's calm reply shows he couldn't care less. He warns he will just watch another minion die like Dolan. Talk about disrespect. Stick with me to see who survives this clash. All right, you and I are about to dive into this drama. The duel is in 4 days, and Leah is watching with an unreadable look. We finally uncover Klein's true motives. This is about so much more than just clearing his own name. He is using this duel to show those secondary family bastards who is boss and completely rebuild the clan. That very night, his decision is already sparking total chaos within the main family branch. Inside the mansion, a voice explodes in absolute rage. His older brother Delane is completely losing his mind. He confronts Klein, who is just sitting there totally relaxed, and screams, asking him if he has lost his mind. A trial by combat where he could actually die. But Klein, looking bored out of his mind, just sighs in exhaustion. He coldly brushes off his brother's worry, reminding him that their father already approved, so there is no going back. Delane is left in absolute shock. He cannot believe their father, the Duke himself, agreed to this suicide mission. In a desperate attempt to protect his precious little brother, Delane offers to fight in his place, pointing out that the rules allow a substitute. He appeals to their clan pride and pay attention here, reminding him they rule the North through their father's immense power. The strongest swordsman alive, and Delane himself, heir to that strength. But Klein stares back, completely unfazed. Crossing his arms, he coldly tells his brother to wake up and lays down the hard truth. If the official heir of Rhineland dies in battle, those secondary branch vultures get the perfect chance to tear them apart. It is way too risky. Klein's inner monologue reveals his frustration. He knows his brother is right, but hates feeling useless under the heavy pressure of being the heir. This duel is a risk he must take to clear his ruined reputation once and for all. He stands firm, telling Delay he will not back down. This is his fight and his chance to prove his worth, and right here, we get a sweet flashback. Delay remembers the exact day Klein was born. He was so happy to have a baby brother that he ran to the nursery, remembering the very first moment he saw him. To his young eyes, he was not just a baby, but an angel. Back in the present, Delay's voice cracks with emotion. He tells Klein that having different mothers does not change a thing. He is his brother, clutching his shoulders in pure desperation. He reminds him that he already lost him to the Holy Order for 7 long years and has only just got him back. The mere thought of losing him again in such a reckless duel is unbearable. A tear rolls down Delay's cheek as he begs him, and for once, Klein's cold mask starts to crack. He is genuinely shocked to see his brother cry, unable to comprehend such deep emotional intensity. But this emotional moment is cut short, and the good times never last, when Dunn locks in, apologizing for interrupting. He has a major announcement. Count Conwell has chosen his champion, a brutal man named Randall. Klein pushes his brother's hand away, focusing completely on his target, and asks who this Randall guy is. Dunn explains that Randall is an excommunicated knight of the Empire, a feared warrior who earned a bloody reputation in battle. And we see exactly how he earned that name when, in a flashback, a blood-soaked tavern door flies wide open. His expulsion from the Holy Knight Order came down to a chilling diagnosis and insatiable bloodlust. This guy is not just a tough opponent, he is a literal monster who thrives on the pleasure of killing. The scene is an absolute bloodbath. Randall sits alone amidst his own carnage, the only one standing in a room full of corpses. Then he chugs down a drink. Champion Randall analyzes his upcoming opponent, the young master of Rhineland. A twisted smile spreads across his face as he thinks to himself, "It has been too long since I last heard a child scream. This is the psycho Klein faces in 4 days." Before the duel, Klein grabs his weapon. Handing over the sword, Dunnell confirms he built it to his exact specs, but drops a dead serious warning. Klein must be incredibly careful, as the blade is designed to shatter instantly upon hitting a mana-infused sword. Klein is not worried at all. He simply grabs the weapon and comments that it is absolutely perfect. With his deceptively fragile weapon in hand, our main character is ready to stand against his lethal opponent. Those 4 days fly by and the trial by combat finally arrives. Fully dressed up, Klein enters the arena alone, looking incredibly calm. The crowd goes absolutely wild. They cannot believe a boy with 0 mana has the guts to walk into a death match. From the VIP box, the Duke and Count watch Klein's insane move, and trust me, this outcome is going to blow us both away. All right, let's dive into this masterclass of absolute manipulation. He asks the Duke if he is really okay with this, bragging that his champion is an elite Imperial Knight way too powerful for a manaless son. He even has the nerve to suggest swapping Klein for his stronger brother, Delane. But the Duke remains as cold and silent as a stone statue. Down below, Klein scans the empty arena, wondering where his opponent is. He asks out loud if the guy is too scared to show. Suddenly, a massive, terrifying shadow with glowing red eyes looms right over him. With a ground-shaking crash, a giant figure leaps into the arena, shattering the stone floor, and there he is. Conwell's champion, the exiled knight and absolute psychopath, Randall. A creepy grin spreads across his scarred face as he mockingly welcomes the young lord. He laughs that Klein is way younger than expected. The beast leans in close, completely swallowing him in his shadow. He mocks Klein's skinny arms, wondering what kind of sound his neck will make when it finally snaps. Watch closely here, because Randall's giant hand grabs Klein's shoulder. But our boy's reaction speed is insane. With a smooth, fluid movement, he slips away and leaps backward to put some distance between them. The crowd is completely baffled by his move. Did he just run? Conwell immediately starts trash-talking Klein to the Duke, asking if the boy can even handle a duel when he is already shaking before it even begins. Randall sneers with arrogance, thinking he easily terrified the young master, whispering about how helpless the boy looks. But that was not fear. Klein was just startled. That sudden grab triggered dark memories of the abusive priest from the Holy Order. He panicked for a split second, a reflex burned into him from years of torment. Cursing the priest in his head, Klein refocuses. Up in the stands, Leah watches the tense standoff with a sharp eye. Her subordinate begs her to leave before Helen finds out, but she refuses. That woman is not her mother, she replies. Plus, she has a personal interest. She remembers promising Klein a kiss if he wins this match, quickly shaking the embarrassing memory out of her head. There is something incredibly important she needs to confirm in this match. Back in the ring, Klein plays it cool, telling the brute he has a stiff neck. But Randall is already charging again. Losing his cool, Klein snaps and yells at the creep, warning him never to lay a finger on him. With pure venom, he asks if the guy's ears are also made of muscle. You saw that, right? Talk about bruised pride. He calls out the brute for being dumped by the Empire. Randall's rage twists into a sickening grin as he mutters that this is absolutely perfect. The filthier Klein's mouth is, the louder he will have to scream in agony later. With a wild roar, Randall swings a devastating punch right at Klein's head. But our boy is ready, pressing a button on his suit. Randall's fist slams into the ground, completely shattering the stone and leaving a massive crater. The raw power is terrifying, but his target is gone. Randall looks up, utterly confused. He only finds a piece of Klein's coat in the dust. The crowd roars in awe at that destructive power. Then they realize something impossible. Lord Klein has completely vanished from the arena. Standing in the crater, Randall scans the area, hunting for his slippery opponent, and then, out of nowhere, like a flash of lightning, Klein reappears right behind the beast, using his coat as a decoy to escape unscathed. Now, down to his vest and shirt, he lands gracefully with sword in hand, letting out a sigh about that psychopath's terrible temper. He knows a direct clash is suicide. Just one hit from that massive body would instantly crush him to pieces. He knows this is definitely not a situation where he can afford to hesitate for a single second. Up in the stands, the crowd is on edge. They whisper that he dodged well, but wonder how he will defeat a monster that can crush bones with a touch. From his seat, Delane watches his younger brother with intense worry. He remembers their last talk, when he offered to fight in Klein's place for this duel, but Klein refused, explaining that if the family heir were to fall in battle, it would give their enemies the perfect excuse to destroy the Rinland clan. Now, Randall attacks again, swinging his massive sword with brutal force. Klein braces himself for the heavy impact, raising his fragile-looking blade to defend. The brute strikes without mercy, but stick around to see if our boy can actually survive. All right, you and I are about to watch Klein dodge some heavy blows, but Randall's massive size and brute strength are just too much, slamming him hard to the ground. With a sadistic laugh, Randall sends him flying through the air before slamming him down with absolutely terrifying force. A sudden flash of light erupts under Klein as he drives his sword deep into the dirt, using the blade to stop himself from falling. Right then, Randall raises his massive fist to deliver the final, crushing blow. As the fist crashes down, Klein blocks with his blade, while Randall shamelessly mocks this fragile young master. He sneeringly demands to know why he is not using his famous necromancy, mockingly calling him the Great Archon. Klein grits his teeth, straining to resist that brutal power. Then, suddenly, Randall's mocking completely stops. Pure confusion washes over his face because something is seriously off. For Klein, that insult just crossed the line. A look of cold amusement flickers in his eyes, thinking to himself just how annoying this entire fight is. For a split second, he considers ending the games and using necromancy to wipe them all out. Suddenly, his eyes glow with a terrifying purple light. Watch closely right here. His true, unfiltered power leaks out, completely paralyzing Randall. An overwhelming wave of crushing bloodlust floods the entire arena with unprecedented pressure. The giant warrior, who once looked like a predator, leaps backward out of pure survival instinct. Breaking into a cold sweat, he desperately wonders what on earth he just felt. Nothing was visible, but that sinister aura shakes his very soul, forcing a single tear of pure terror down his cheek. Never in his entire life had he felt such primal fear. Behind Klein, a spectral Grim Reaper materializes, reflecting his immense necromantic power. Count Conwell is utterly baffled, not understanding why his champion suddenly froze. Duke Henkel watches his son closely with an unreadable expression on his face, his gaze incredibly sharp. But just as quickly, that deadly aura vanishes as Klein calms down, choosing to stick to their original plan. He reassures the petrified Randall, promising he won't use necromancy today. "I am a Rhineland," he declares, "and this arena is where we prove ourselves with swords." The Duke's eyes widen in absolute shock. Klein's brother can only whisper his name in disbelief, witnessing a side of him he never knew existed. His words echo through the arena, and the once skeptical crowd suddenly erupts into a massive thunderous roar, chanting Lord Klein's name. Count Conwell looks like he's seen a ghost, completely stunned by this impossible turn of events. I know what you're thinking, but Randall tries to rationalize that terrifying pressure, telling himself it was just a fluke, and that his combat level is still far superior. To reassert his dominance, he floods his body with mana, turning his skin an ominous glowing red. He reminds himself that true imperial swordsmanship means never holding back, pushing every sense. His veins bulge as he channels maximum power. His own blood seems to boil as he prepares his ultimate strike, lunging toward Klein with explosive, blinding speed. He unleashes a wild flurry of heavy slashes, roaring that this Rhineland brat absolutely must die. But as the blow nears, Klein's perception slows to a crawl. He sees everything. His glowing purple star eye opens wide. He tracks Randall's exact movement, his mana levels, and the precise trajectory of his blade. To him, the wild knight moves in slow motion, exposing every weakness. Klein dodges the chaotic red slashes by a hair. Randall's frustration peaks, and he roars in sheer fury that Klein is dodging like a damn fly. Unable to land a single hit, he lets out one desperate roar, putting everything into one massive final swing. As the dust clears from his failed strike, the brute looks around wildly. Klein has completely vanished. He is gone. Randall questions if anyone could actually read his blade path so fast, but it is already too late. Klein materializes mid-air, right behind the heavy knight. With a smug grin, he points out his opponent's fatal flaw. With a massive body like that, your back is left wide open. Raising his glowing purple blade, he unleashes the secret Rhineland technique, the legendary meteor sword. Every knight watching, including Delane and the Duke, recognizes that legendary skill instantly. Randall shrieks in absolute agony as the blade tears through his back, spraying blood. It makes zero sense. The kid does not have a single drop of mana, so how on earth is this happening? In the stands, Leah's subordinate looks on in absolute shock, while Leah herself just stares, face flushed and heart racing. Just you wait, girl. Our main character is definitely going to keep you busy later. And that's where we leave it. Ready to see what Duke, Hankel, and Dunn plot next? Come along with me. The Duke admits that in any other situation, he would have stopped this duel. Dunn watches anxiously as the Duke admits that acting on impulse would only ruin the Rinland family prestige. The Duke points out the harsh reality against an Imperial knight. Young Klein has absolutely no chance of winning. Dunn asks why he accepted the duel then, and the Duke replies that Klein did it to defend his late mother's honor. He clenches his fists in sheer anguish, cursing his own helpless state. He failed to save his son from exile and false accusations, so he feels he has no right to stop him now. But Dunn tries to calm the distressed father, telling him he has nothing to worry about. With complete confidence, Dunlul reminds the Duke of one key fact about his son, young Master Klein never fights battles he will lose. Back in the present, the sheer impact of Klein's technique is undeniable. A deep, bloody gash slices across Randall's massive back. Duke Hankel cannot believe his eyes. He can only whisper his son's name, completely stunned by this seemingly impossible feat. Pay close attention here to understand this. We must know the Rinland sword style, always symbolized by cold steel. Their graceful style stands in sharp contrast to imperial swordsmanship, which is like a lion hunting a gazelle, pure ferocity designed to crush opponents with raw power. It relies on unleashing a massive torrent of mana, all at once, to completely obliterate the enemy. The Rinland style, however, is built on composure, always watching and waiting for that one perfect opening. It is the way of the eagle, an art of absolute precision and efficiency. The eagle waits for the opponent to show a crack, striking with lethal precision while wasting zero energy. And that is exactly the essence of the technique Klein just unleashed. He explains it is the ultimate art for maximum efficiency with minimal mana, smirking as he reveals his secret. That is how he, a guy without a single drop of mana, can master his family's legendary techniques. Even without raw power, it is enough to bring down a clumsy giant like Randall, who now roars in pure rage. Being looked down on by someone he thought was at his mercy is completely intolerable to him. He grinds his teeth with a drooling, sadistic grin, calling Klein a rat as a wild roar unleashes a violent crimson aura. His muscles swell to a colossal size as he concentrates all his energy for one final, devastating blow. The crowd shrinks back, absolutely terrified by the crushing pressure flooding the entire arena. Count Conwell's eyes widen with shock and excitement. He knows that technique all too well. It is Randall's ultimate move, a sudden blast of mana that instantly paralyzes the opponent. A terrifying wave of red energy floods the battlefield in a brutal display of power to lock Klein in place. But Klein just watches calmly. I know you're wondering how he survives this, as Randall charges in screaming that he will win. His mana-infused scimitar is ready to cleave Klein in two, while his brother screams in desperation from the stands. The massive, glowing blade crashes down upon Klein, an unstoppable, destructive force, but right before the battle, Dunn had handed Klein a very unusual sword. This weapon was custom-built to be fragile, specifically designed to shatter upon impact with a mana-infused blade. Back in the present, everything goes exactly to plan. With a loud crack, Klein's sword shatters on impact. Randall's face twists into a manic grin with Klein unarmed. He thinks the duel is already over. His brutal swing slices empty air, completely missing, as the young master uses the impact to slip past his guard. But this was no mistake. A sly smirk crosses Klein's face, with his purple eye glowing with hidden power. He declares the weapon to hunt Randall is ready, as a white feather symbolizing the Rinland eagle gently floats down. The lion, representing Randall's brute force, stares at the falling feather in complete bewilderment. He tracks the descending feather with his eyes, completely blind to the danger creeping up on him. As the feather lands, the eagle's massive shadow completely envelops the lion, sealing its fate. In the arena, Klein grips his broken hilt. In a flash, Klein bypasses Randall's defense and severs his arm, which goes flying in a spray of fresh blood. His scimitar, once the symbol of his terrifying strength, drops uselessly to the ground. And that is where we leave it, as the Duke's voice thunders with authority, declaring that the duel is over. Get ready, because you and I are about to watch a total underdog become an absolute legend. Dunnell cannot believe his eyes, but he finally sees Klein's genius strategy seal an easy victory. The entire arena falls into a deep, absolute silence. Randall drops to his knees, screaming in agony as dark, tainted blood gushes from his arm. Medics rush onto the field, desperately trying to stop the bleeding and save the warrior. Klein watches the bloody scene with an unreadable expression. He calmly wonders if they can even save that arm, but as the healers cast their magic, one of them confirms the absolute worst. The damage is too severe. All they can do is prepare a metal prosthetic for the defeated knight. Klein watches with cold indifference, thinking that even after 200 years, medical magic has barely progressed at all. His thoughts are cut short when his father, Duke Hankel, approaches him from behind with a face full of genuine worry. He stares deeply at his son, asking a dead serious question. Does he really feel nothing after seeing an arm get severed? Caught off guard, a cold drop of sweat rolls down Klein's cheek. For a split second, he forgot to play his part. Realizing his cold archmage attitude does not match the old Klein, he tries to fix it by scratching his head awkwardly, wondering if he should fake being scared. Watch closely what he does next. Elsewhere, Count Conwell is in complete panic. He cannot believe his champion lost, crying over the massive fortune he wasted on that supposedly invincible knight. Dunlell takes a bold step forward with a firm voice. He reminds the hysterical Count of their deal. He must admit his crimes and fully submit to the winner's demands. But Conwell, blinded by rage and grief, screams that he won't accept this. He argues he already lost his son and his knight, but his tantrum is cut short when an invisible blade grazes his neck. Then, we see the culprit, our very own Klein. An overwhelming pressure crashes down on Conwell, forcing him straight to his knees. Unable to move or speak, the Count opens his eyes in sheer horror, completely baffled. He claws at his throat, desperately gasping for air. He genuinely believed his throat had been slashed. Klein slowly approaches him, speaking in a chilling, menacing tone. He commands him to confess his sins before the northern ruler and beg for forgiveness on his knees. A terrifying purple energy erupts all around him. Klein's voice echoes with a dark power, declaring Conwell will be crushed by his sins. Can you guys feel that tension? This is definitely not some cheap scare tactics. Klein is using Voice of the Dead, a forbidden necromancer technique that strikes spiritual terror into the hearts of the living. This mental strike is absolutely devastating, filling Conwell's mind with visions of demise and pure, hopeless despair. A terrifying Grim Reaper seals his fate. He begins to shake uncontrollably, losing his mind under this brutal mental pressure. Klein stares down at the broken man, his expression as cold as the freezing northern winds. Weeping and crawling in the dirt, the once proud Count begs for mercy, his voice choked with heavy tears. He confesses to every single crime, admitting his plot to murder the young Klein, and worse, insulting the memory of his late mother, Grand Duchess Claire. Up in the stands, a noble shivers in fear. He whispers in disbelief, shocked to see a pillar of the prestigious Branch family fall so utterly humiliated. With justice served, Klein raises the hilt of his shattered sword. This victory is not the end, but the start of his true legend. He addresses the entire arena, his voice booming with a newfound strength and confidence. He proclaims himself the rightful challenger and sole victor of this intense trial by combat. I am Klein Rhineland, son of Grand Duchess Claire Ladellis and the strongest knight of the north, Henkel Rhinland. The scene shifts to a dark, solemn cathedral as a mysterious silhouette enters with completely unknown intentions. Inside, Cardinal Morak prays devoutly with clasped hands before the massive statue of the God of Light. The cardinal asks for heavenly guidance to tread this dangerous, painful path into the shadows. The visitor is none other than Priest Garrison. Walking down the echoing corridor, Cardinal Morak greets him and immediately notices his incredibly serious tone. He asks Garrison what happened to leave him so shaken. The priest reports that their target was ambushed by a necromancer and his undead horde. He insists on verifying the situation in person, but the cardinal remains incredibly calm about the whole thing. He tells Garrison not to worry, revealing that the sudden necromancer attack was entirely part of the plan. He explains they sent the necromancer in cahoots with the Empire, using him as a mere pawn in a much bigger game. The cardinal lays out his twisted scheme. By using the fear of necromancers, they will drive the terrified masses straight to the church. To him, a few sacrifices are a cheap price to regain their absolute power. Trust me, we are about to see this story get completely crazy. Buckle up, we are about to see this fake speech end in choking despair. Garrison Vermin grabs the cardinal by the throat, lifting him into the air with one hand. With absolute cold fury in his eyes, Garrison condemns Murrow as a disgrace, who played cheap politics by making deals with dirty heretics. Murrow struggles desperately, but Garrison's iron grip instantly silences his pathetic pleas. His eyes bulge, and with a sickening crack, Garrison crushes his head, brutally ending those corrupt plans. He drops the lifeless body without a second thought, duty done, as another figure steps from the shadows asking if he feels better now. Walking right through the carnage, with a creepy smile, is Polymenel, the Archbishop of the Holy Order himself. He calmly points out that Garrison has slaughtered more of his own clergymen than any necromancer in history. Garrison turns to face him, asking with a dark, grim look if this was all his doing. The Archbishop keeps strolling down the blood-soaked hallway, admitting that while it was not his direct order, he did authorize the purge, and he has got some massive news about their target under surveillance. Furious, Garrison throws a massive punch, but the Archbishop completely vanishes into thin air. Reappearing right behind Garrison, Polyman explains that necromancy always leaves a trace, and this flask holds leftovers from the dark mage Garrison killed. However, this flask holds two different liquids, revealing two types of necromancy, meaning one trace comes from the soul return arts researched by the Empire. The other part comes from original necromancy, which manipulates souls instead of corpses, as Garrison starts putting the pieces together. The shocking conclusion? There were actually two different necromancers at the scene of the attack. Pay close attention now, because what we are about to learn changes everything. Their target, the second son of the Rinland family, Klein Rinland, is a necromancer, completely breaking Garrison's composure. On a dark and stormy night, deep in the fallen Count Conwell's territory, a lone miner chips away at a glowing mana stone. His pickaxe echoes through the silence as he works tirelessly. The clanking metal is the only sound alongside the heavy rain, but as he wipes his sweat, a creepy shadow rises and a hand reaches out. The miner spins around, his face frozen in absolute terror as he realizes he is no longer alone. His scream is swallowed by the storm as he plunges into the dark abyss of the mine. Meanwhile, over at the Rinland mansion, Emily the maid is panicking after accidentally sewing a rag doll that looks exactly like young Master Klein. Across the room, Klein remains deeply buried in his book, completely ignoring his maid's frantic gestures. A week has passed since his grand victory, and I bet you remember how Klein savored that triumph. Using the forbidden voice of the dead to force a complete confession out of Count Conwell, and raising his broken sword hilt, he announced his return to the world, hoping to finally get some respect. But reality is brutal, because while his mind is overpowered, his 15-year-old body just cannot keep up and gets exhausted. Back in the study, Emily throws a fit, whining that Klein is mean for always playing by himself. Klein blankly replies that he is reading, but Emily cheekily barks back that reading a novel is basically playing. Klein stays quiet with a small smirk, because she has absolutely no clue what he is actually reading. He opens the book to reveal pages packed with arcane symbols and handwritten notes instead of prose some novel. It is his private grimoire, detailing secrets of anatomy, magic circuits, and the dark arts of necromancy. Sipping his tea, Klein measures his current strength, realizing he can only summon 11 skeletons at most right now. That is not nearly enough for real war, but his biggest threat is Garrison, whose hatred for necromancers is a ticking time bomb. Klein knows he must reclaim his peak strength before Garrison decides to make his move. Later, inside his father's office, Duke Hankel shows him a report about undead sightings near their newly acquired mine. Talk about perfect timing, a golden opportunity just landed straight in Klein's hands. He immediately volunteers for the hunt, though the Duke looks worried, pointing out that people have already died. But Klein does not even blink, assuring his father that it won't be an issue at all. He knows his courtroom victory earned him tons of trust, and just as he is imagining a solo mission to unleash his dark powers, a very familiar face pops up. We leave things here, with Commander Dunn smiling right at him. Get ready, because you and I are about to jump into an absolute masterpiece of a story. The Duke assigns Klein a bodyguard, but while camping, Klein is dying of rage, while Dunley happily cooks. With a huge smile, he offers Klein a skewer, who accepts the charred food with pure resignation. Dunley, always the chatterbox, tries to break the ice, but Klein just stares at the burnt offering. Bluntly, he calls the skewer literal charcoal and tells Dunley he would help more by just sitting still. Dunley just apologizes, scratching his head in embarrassment. It is pretty obvious that cooking is not his thing. Sitting in silence by the fire, Klein cannot help but slightly admire Dunley's easygoing nature. Taking a bite of the burnt food, Klein remembers his past life, spending 10 years running from everyone. A burnt meal is nothing. Suddenly, Dunley breaks the silence again, this time with a much more serious tone. He tells Klein that he is different from other kids, pointing out his hidden sword talent and powerful spirit. His suspicions lead him to a crazy theory that Klein might actually be the reincarnation of the legendary demon Archmond. Klein freezes, food in hand. On the inside, he is screaming in absolute terror. Pay attention here, because Dunley almost exposes the whole secret. Klein quickly plays it off, warning him to never say that again, especially near the fanatic priest. Dunley keeps insisting that Archman was a demon capable of resurrecting millions of dead people. Suddenly, the campfire flickers wildly, as if some invisible force is trying to blow it out completely. Dunley tries to find where the wind came from, but Klein's gaze turns murderous. In a low, threatening voice, he firmly warns him to never bring up that damn topic again. Dunley is stunned by Klein's intense hostility as a cold drop of sweat runs down his face. That suffocating tension finally breaks when a blood-curdling scream echoes from the nearest village. The village is in absolute chaos. A massive horde of undead sweeps through the streets, terrorizing everyone in their path. The grotesque creatures, their eyes glowing with evil light, savagely lunge at the helpless villagers. But Dunley is already springing into action. With a golden flash, he shreds the monsters to clear a path. The knight yells a warning as one monster slips past his defense and charges straight at Klein. But Klein doesn't even flinch. Channeling purple energy, he slices the creature in half in one fluid motion. He then looks at Dunley with complete indifference, ordering him to focus entirely on saving the villagers. Obeying the command, Dunley doubles his efforts, shielding the innocent people from the relentless undead swarm. I know what you are thinking, but after saving them, Dunley introduces Klein as the second son of Rinland, while Klein just stares at the carnage. The stench of death fills the air. Klein immediately recognizes the reanimation magic. It is identical to what was used against the forest assassins. A terrified survivor explains that these monsters actually started showing up 2 months ago. When Count Conwell shut down the mines, people just began vanishing out of nowhere. The man's voice cracks as he shares the worst news. Those monsters are not strangers. They are the exact same villagers who went missing. Blinded by sheer grief, another man grabs Klein by the collar, demanding to know if he is truly a Rinland. Dunley tries to step in, but the hysterical man shoves him away, weeping with uncontrollable rage. He screams in despair that they begged the Duke for help for 2 whole months only to be ignored, pointing at a corpse Klein just took down. He cries out in absolute agony. That monster was his own father, a humble miner. He collapses to his knees, his wails echoing through the empty plaza, as he wonders what they did to deserve such a cruel fate. Klein stares at the weeping man with an unreadable expression, catching a fleeting memory of his past life as the Demon King Archman. With a chilling coldness, Klein orders him to shut up. His eyes glow with a purple aura, asking why the man is blaming him. He did not turn their families into monsters, so their anger makes zero sense. The villager just looks up at him with total hopelessness. When Dunley tries to intervene, Klein raises his hand, stopping him instantly. A glowing blue energy begins to gather in his palm. Dunley watches in absolute shock as Klein chants an ancient spell. The bodies of the fallen begin to twitch, suddenly enveloped in that same mysterious spectral blue light. Klein proclaims himself as the guide of fallen souls, promising to fulfill their final dying wishes. As his voice echoes, a burst of energy sweeps across the plaza, and glowing spectral figures rise from every single corpse. These are the souls of the villagers, finally set free from their cursed bodies. Dunley watches in disbelief, recognizing soul resonance, a sacred art that was completely lost 200 years ago. And that is where you and I leave it today, watching a son weep while his father's spirit gives him one last peaceful look before fading into the light. Let's watch together as these freed souls float up into the night sky, a tragic yet beautiful sight. With peace finally granted, Klein and Dunley leave the village behind, heading straight toward the corrupted mine. As they walk, Dunley asks what the spirits said. Klein calmly replies that they thanked him and begged for revenge. That word, revenge, sparks old suspicions inside Dunley. Remembering the rumors about Archmont, his amazement turns to doubt, and he stops dead in his tracks to confront young Klein. Drawing his sword, he points the gleaming blade straight at Klein's neck. With sharp eyes and a deadly serious voice, he asks the burning question from the trial, "Who are you, really?" Dunley recalls the exact day young Master Klein Rinland returned to the family estate. He spent 7 long years locked away in a monastery, and terrified servants whispered about a cursed child named Archmont. Yet what shocked Dunley most was the boy's gaze. It was a dark, empty void, impossible to believe it belonged to a child. Soon, strange things began. One morning, they found a dead cat in the kitchen, sending panic through the maids. Now, watch closely, because they found a second dead cat in the garden, and a third the next day. The count kept rising until they discovered a total of 7 dead cats scattered throughout the mansion. Rumors spread like wildfire among the staff, placing the blame entirely on the young master's cursed bloodline. Unlike the panicked staff, Klein remained completely indifferent, spending his days just staring out the window. Everyone suspected he was the demon Archmont, but Dunley believed he was far too young to be involved. Yet, his doubts grew one night when he spotted a dim light moving through the dark corridors. It was Klein, carrying a lantern out of the estate late at night. Dunley wondered where he was going. He watched him from afar walking through the forest, his cloak fluttering in the cool night breeze. Dunley followed silently, masking his footsteps on the crunchy leaves as they walked along a dark path. The caw of a crow shattered the silence before they reached an old, desolate graveyard filled with tombstones. Hiding nearby, Dunley was puzzled by Klein's presence until he heard a strange scratching sound behind the graves. Peering closer, Dunley's eyes stretched wide in absolute shock. The young master was doing something completely unexpected. Stunned, Dunley watched as Klein treated those very same dead cats with pure gentleness and care. The commander was left speechless, unable to believe his own eyes. I know what you're thinking, a terrifying necromancer doing this? But Klein was gently burying those poor, diseased cats. But Dunley tried to protest, saying he would hurt his hands, but Klein stood firm, stating it was a necessary task. The boy's unexpected kindness left the knight speechless. The memory fades, bringing us back to the tense present, with Dunley's sword grazing Klein's neck. Yet Klein remains perfectly calm, his back still turned. He asks if he remembers the first maxim of Berkel Rinland, their founder. Dunley hesitates before reciting the words. It is one's actions, not their origin, that define who they truly are. Klein points out that this rule made a peasant captain of knights and let a foreigner's son survive. With the cold steel still pressing against his throat, Klein says nobody has spent more time with him since the monastery, so Dunley must choose. He delivers an ultimatum. If he truly believes he is the demon Archmont, strike him down. The knight stares, his mind racing wildly. He remembers the young boy burying those animals with genuine compassion. With a heavy heart, the commander lowers his blade. He admits he is still not fully convinced, but he makes one thing absolutely clear. He firmly declares he serves the second young master, Klein Rinland, not some atrocious demon from the continent. Klein turns slightly, nearly speechless, and casually thanks him for the compliment with total indifference. With their doubts cleared, they reach the mine. Dunley lights a torch, cutting through the heavy darkness inside. The ground is littered with bones, a chilling sign of the death ruling over this place. Stepping inside, the torchlight reveals a massive cavern held together by rotting wooden beams. Dunley catches the stench of rotting corpses, and Klein nods, adding that they are moving too. Looking down, they spot the undead wandering aimlessly. Stick with me to find out what happens next. Come along with me. Dunley prepares to draw his sword, but Klein simply raises his hands, unleashing a brilliant wave of blue necromancy from the ground. A new army begins to rise. Dunley can only stare in disbelief as Klein's necromancy summons heavily armored skeletons from the dirt. With a single word, Klein orders the charge, and his new army crashes brutally onto the unsuspecting undead. These skeletons move with terrifying speed and precision, their hollow eyes glowing with a malevolent, bright orange light. The low-tier undead stand zero chance, freezing in absolute terror as they watch their inevitable doom draw near. Klein's creations rip them apart, using enchanted weapons and brutal force to tear the corpses to pieces. Dunley is left completely speechless. This is next-level power. Klein calmly mentions hearing the exact same thing from Dalton's mercenaries right before these skeletons shredded them. The battle is a chaotic whirlwind of blue energy and shattering bones as Klein's overwhelming forces completely crush the enemy. Dunley yells at Klein to follow him. After walking a short distance, the knight catches the sound of strange noises up ahead. He spins around to warn his young master that, based on the sheer noise, pay close attention here. They are outnumbered 40-1, but Klein is already moving, casting a massive spell that lights up the fallen corpses. Dunley demands to know what on earth he is doing. Klein calmly replies that he is simply converting the dead into allies, adding more skeletons to their ranks. Klein casually remarks that this should be more than enough to put up a fight. Dunley is left absolutely speechless. They take their stand right in the middle of the crossroads as a massive horde of ghouls rushes them from every direction. Klein commands the battlefield smoothly from the rear, directing his troops as his skeleton warriors relentlessly tear through the ghoul horde. Their movements are flawless, sweeping away the remaining threats and executing them with a level of cold, ruthless efficiency. Dunley wipes a cold bead of sweat from his forehead, completely unable to process the absolute insanity he just witnessed. Skeletons are supposed to be low-rank garbage, yet these monsters move like a highly trained elite army. Within seconds, it is over. The cavern floor is covered in the mangled bodies of their enemies. Dunley cannot even gather enough breath to speak. They just obliterated an enemy force 4 times their size, and they did it completely effortlessly. With the entrance secure, Klein tells Dunley that from here on out, it is just the two of them. He looks at his knight and asks for his absolute trust. Both venture deep into the dark mine, their path barely illuminated by the flickering light of Dunley's torch. Just as Dunley wonders how much further they have to walk, a warm drop of liquid hits his cheek. He touches it, realizing it is fresh blood. Suddenly, a faint, agonizing whimper echoes from the heavy darkness. It is a human voice. Dunley rushes forward, shouting that they are here to save them. But the voice only whispers a chilling plea: "Kill me. Look closely with me, because what the torchlight reveals is an absolute nightmare. Dozens of villagers hanging there, bleeding out for a dark ritual." Dunley stumbles back in horror, surrounded by the agonized wails of the missing villagers' tortured souls. A chilling voice cuts through the quiet, praising Klein for figuring out they were kidnapped to be used as reanimation fuel. A dark silhouette slowly emerges from the shadows, her footsteps echoing in an incredibly ominous way. A woman wrapped in a dark, hooded cloak appears, radiating immense power. Klein's eyes narrow as he immediately recognizes that signature energy. She pulls back her hood, revealing a cascade of crimson hair paired with a sinister, knowing smirk. With familiar elegance, she greets him. "It has been such a long time." Staring straight into his eyes, she addresses him by his true name from his past life, Demon of the Continent, Lord Archimond. Klein's eyes widen in absolute shock. Sometime after the trial, Emily happily hands him a cookie to celebrate his massive victory. The Grand Colosseum now stands completely empty, a silent witness to the brutal clash that just went down. Later on, as Klein, Dunley, and a cookie-munching Emily walk through the corridors, a mysterious figure watches them from a corner. Klein senses the presence for a brief second, but lets it go. It is Leia, blushing furiously as she clutches her chest, wondering why she is hiding. As if we don't already know. It is completely obvious she is just trying to protect her lips from a kiss. This is where they explain the history of necromancers, who were originally seen as mediums channeling souls to receive divine prophecies. But after that day, the practice became deeply feared and widely hated. It all started with the Archimond incident, a massive catastrophe where tens of millions of undead overran the entire continent. Led by the powerful necromancer himself, this unstoppable horde didn't eat, rest, or die, defying every rule of war known to man. The bloody conflict finally ended only when the legendary hero, Berkel Rinland, managed to defeat Archimond in battle. What do you and I make of this? Many mages became obsessed with the dark power of necromancy. However, their research was limited, only allowing them to master basic-level reanimation magic. Get ready, because today we are going to see how modern necromancers ended up as cheap, second-rate mages with mediocre powers. Just like the mysterious woman standing right now in front of Klein and Dunn. She confidently introduces herself as Pale, a necromancer, and calls Klein by a name that terrifies Dunn. Lord Archimond. Tension fills the cave as they confront her. Dunn cannot stop thinking about that name, but another sensation suddenly grabs his full attention. He feels an overwhelming torrent of incredible mana emanating directly from Pale. Klein focuses too, noticing she has masterfully imbued magic right into her robe. It is an advanced technique few can master. Without hesitation, Dunlell draws his sword instantly, his loyalty completely overcoming any fear. Furious, he demands that Pale stop calling his young master by the name of that trash. But Klein watches silently, speechless at being called trash. Pale laughs in amusement, brushing off his accusation like a joke, then fake apologizes to the young heir of the great house of Rinland. Suddenly, her gaze turns ice cold. She tells Klein that she knows his true nature. Guided by rumors and the strange magic she senses, she firmly declares that he is a necromancer just like her. Intrigued, she eyes the sword at his hip, since it is rare to see a necromancer armed. Dun gets sick of her games. Watch this scene closely, because Dunley cuts her off to demand answers about the villagers and the ritual. Pale mocks his demands, absolute contempt written all over her face. She proclaims true necromancers do not use ordinary swords. They wield superior power, dominating souls and ruling over death itself. To prove her point, a sinister stream of dark energy bursts from her mouth. The dark stream flows toward the trapped villagers hanging in the shadows. Their tortured souls are brutally ripped away, echoing in silent screams. Terrifying black tentacles sprout out of nowhere, draining the life force of those helpless captives. Pale raises her hand, creating a whirlwind of souls above her as she prepares to reveal her monstrous creation. With a victorious smile, she promises to show them the true meaning of necromancy. She weaves the souls into an overflowing orb of death. "Behold," she shouts, "the masterpiece I dedicated my entire life to." The dark energy fuses into a colossal, monstrous silhouette that slams onto the ground, shaking the entire cave. I know you and I are thinking the exact same thing looking at this horrible monstrosity. The knight struggles to process this. Dun has witnessed the horrors of war, but nothing prepared him for such a nightmare. This massive beast, made from the remains of the villagers, is a cyclops. Pale stands proudly beside her grotesque creation. She speaks tenderly to the beast, calling it her little baby and apologizing for making it wait so long. With a chillingly sweet voice, she gives her creation a direct order. Crush those two into absolute mush. The Cyclops stomps down, shaking the cavern. The giant charges forward at a speed that completely defies its massive weight. Dun opens his eyes wide, terrified by such speed, and screams in desperation to warn his young lord. He knows Klein is in mortal danger, but the boy stands firm, raising a hand as if to stop the Titan. Dun's instincts kick in, unable to leave Klein alone, but Klein shoves him away, saving him from the devastating blow. The giant arm swings through the air, sending Klein flying. Klein crashes hard and rolls across the ground. Getting up, a streak of blood drips from his lips, but he stays calm. The Cyclops looms over him, its eyes glowing with pure malice. The creature raises its foot, ready to crush him mercilessly. Right then, Dun stabs his sword into the monster's leg, blocking it with his body. Gritting his teeth, he pushes back furiously against that immense weight. He glares at the monster with pure hatred and roars, "Do not dare," he bellows, "do not dare touch my young lord." The Cyclops stumbles back with its legs sliced, while Klein watches, amazed by his knight's unwavering loyalty. This only intrigues Pale, a cruel smile spreading across her face. Dun lands gracefully in front of the severed limb as the Cyclops roars in pain. Pale applauds sarcastically, praising the knight's impressive strike, but mocks him, claiming even that won't hurt her masterpiece. To prove her point, the Cyclops' severed leg begins to twitch and attaches itself right back to its body. The warrior watches in horror as the giant's leg regenerates in a blink, while the beast roars, shaking the earth. Dunley curses at this absurd regeneration. But stick with me because his will to fight is still completely intact. Get ready, because you and I are about to watch Klein risk his life to save him a kid with 0 mana. He can't believe he ever suspected someone like him, thinking he was the legendary Archcommand. Now, there's only one way to clear his shame. With newly found strength, he unleashes a flurry of fierce golden slashes. He swears to lay down his life for his young master, but even though his blade cuts deep, the Cyclops heals faster than he can strike. Pale's laughter echoes through the cave. Damn it, the monster is regenerating again. Dunley roars in pure frustration. He desperately lunges at the beast, but every single attempt is totally useless. Leaping into the air, he aims straight for the head. "I'll take it off in one shot," he screams, bringing his sword down with everything he's got. His blade connects with a sickening crunch, but the giant monster barely even feels it. The beast swats him away like a fly, crashing him hard into the stone wall. Dunley lies defeated and broken, pinned against the rocks. Pale watches coldly. This whole scene is beyond pathetic. He is just way too weak. After years of brutal and endless experiments, she finally shattered every known limit of necromancy. She had built a unique, unstoppable beast that absolutely nobody could touch. And because of that, she was completely sure of one thing. This right here was the true power of raw talent. A crazed, manic laugh escapes her lips, overflowing with pride and sheer madness. She screams that not even the legendary Archimond could have made something so perfect. "I actually did it," she shrieks wildly. "I have surpassed the wisdom of Archimond." As she gloats, the Cyclops grabs the injured Dunley and opens its massive jaws to swallow him whole. But watch closely, a calm voice cuts through the chaos. Core connection point. It's Klein, walking forward without any fear. The second part is the core suture, he continues. Pale is absolutely stunned, wondering how on earth he knows the deepest secrets of her creation. Klein explains that this suture is the channel for magic formulas, the link that binds the corpses and triggers their regeneration. He looks at Dunley and asks, "So, how do we kill it?" "Attacking its body like you did is just a waste of time," Klein says coldly. "All you have to do is destroy the core, and it's over." Wiping a bit of blood from his lip, Klein's eyes flash with an incredibly menacing purple light. "So, that core," he asks, "where exactly is it?" Pale immediately regains her smugness, explaining that the Cyclops' core never stays in one place. It's a vital spot tied to its life force, constantly traveling through its entire body, flowing just like blood itself. "I know what you're thinking, finding a moving target is completely impossible." She smiles with absolute pure evil. "Did you not hear me earlier?" she sneers. "This is the masterwork I dedicated my entire life to creating." She looks at Klein with utter contempt. "Before true talent, you are absolutely nothing," she declares coldly, unleashing a massive wave of energy. "Crush him," she orders her Cyclops. The massive beast surges forward, completely ready to obey her command. As the monster charges, Klein simply mutters, "Talent?" The boy recalls vivid memories from a very distant life. Memories of ripping apart thousands of Cyclopes in his past. To him, this was just another Tuesday. The feeling is still as fresh as if it happened yesterday. His eyes analyze the monster, seeing the energy flow right in front of him. His gaze locks onto the glowing, moving core. With a burst of speed and a flash of purple light, he strikes. "I already got it," he says calmly. Pale's eyes go wide with total disbelief and absolute shock. In one swift, flawless slash, Klein's sword hits the mark dead on, shattering both the core and Pale's entire world. The sound of shattering glass rings out as the core explodes and the beast's head flies off. She thinks it's impossible. How did he locate it? Klein glances sideways at Pale and asks if this garbage was really what she dedicated her entire life to. With a mocking smirk, he says, "Maybe you should just make it a hobby in your next life." A voice questions what death is. It is often compared to sleep, a complete release from the heavy burdens of daily life. Pale, the once arrogant necromancer, slowly regains consciousness. She opens her eyes, but the world around her has completely changed. She finds herself submerged in a dark, endless liquid. Looking up, she sees countless coffins floating in the empty abyss. A terrifying welcome to the afterlife. She stands up in absolute panic, frantically demanding to know exactly where she is. A towering, shadowy figure looms over her, a being of immense and truly terrifying power. Desperate, she tries to run, but the water holds her back. The entity reveals itself, clad in bone armor and wielding a massive scythe. It's Klein, but transformed into his true form, Archcommand, the fearsome king of all necromancers. Calmly, He warns her that she still doesn't grasp the gravity of her situation. Pale can only stare back in absolute terror. Archimonde descends for her judgment, and, honestly, you and I are going to need to see what happens next. Brace yourselves, because we are about to witness Pale face her absolute worst nightmare, the legendary demon who started all necromancy. Standing there in the flesh, he gestures for her to come closer, a simple command her body cannot resist. Sweat pours down as her body moves against her will, dragged through dark waters like a helpless puppet of the Necromancer King. Archimonde begins listing her sins, forcing her to watch visions of the innocents she brutally tortured. The faces of her victims flash before her eyes, their silent screams echoing with terrifying power through this dark realm. He reminds her of the sick pleasure she took in watching their endless agony. Pale snaps, screaming in absolute despair that Archimonde should be dead, but dark sludge splashes her face in pure mockery. Archimonde passes judgment, condemning her for torturing the living and desecrating the dead to use them as mere tools. His eyes hold zero mercy. As he delivers the final sentence, he declares that she will now become his puppet. All around them, coffins snap open. An eerie force suddenly grips her, dragging her helplessly toward an open grave. She struggles in vain. Her power is utterly meaningless inside his absolute domain. Don't blink. Now her arrogance shatters into pure primal terror as she is dragged, screaming desperately, into the dark. She clings to the edge, her eyes wide with frantic panic, but Archimonde has no mercy and slams the lid shut. His glowing eyes promise this is only the beginning, and he swings his massive scythe to slice the coffin in half. Her final scream is cut short. Suddenly, Pale wakes up gasping for air on the freezing floor of the mine. Tears of pure relief stream down her face as she desperately tries to convince herself it was just a nightmare. Nearby, Dunlell stirs awake. Dazed and deeply confused, he looks around at the wreckage and notices Pale lying there. Seeing her reduced to nothing but a severed head, he simply cannot believe his own eyes. Baffled, he tries to piece together what happened after he blacked out. Remembering only the Cyclops explosion, he reaches a logical conclusion. Young Master Klein defeated both the powerful necromancer and her giant beast alone. But Pale feels absolutely no relief. As Klein approaches, she lets out a shriek of raw terror. Klein kneels right beside her, looking completely unscathed after that devastating fight. He calmly asks if she is ready to face reality, but Pale is not listening. She only hears Archimonde. I know what you are thinking, and yes, this nightmare is real. Klein Rinland is Archimonde. His terrifying face overlaps with the boy. In the reflection of her terrified eyes, she sees the true king of necromancers. As she opens her mouth to scream, Klein gently places a finger over her lips, silencing her with chilling composure. A mysterious purple aura flows from him as he quietly warns her that he needs answers. The ghostly silhouette of Archimonde looms behind him as the interrogation starts. He demands to know absolutely everything: who sent her, how many accomplices remain, and their ultimate goal, offering her a very simple choice: talk and die painlessly, or resist and receive eternal life. Pale grits her teeth, fully understanding the horrific implication of that offer. Klein leans in close, making it crystal clear that her torment will never end if she refuses to talk. We cut to Dunn, who is diligently writing down every dark detail Klein dictates from this brutal interrogation. Looks like Pale talked. Klein relaxes peacefully as Dunn wraps up taking down the notes. As he gets up to leave, her severed head begs him to wait, desperately asking what becomes of her. She screams that she kept her end of the bargain and demands he do the same. Klein stops and stares. A terrifying smile creeps onto his face as he recalls the other half of their little agreement. Pale sheds tears of relief, thinking her sweet release has finally come, while Klein promises to keep his word and summons a strange, glowing orb. He hovers the hypnotic orb of energy over her head as she watches in confusion. But this is no quick death. From the cave shadows, a sickening rustle echoes as a massive swarm of cockroaches emerges. Thousands of vile bugs swarm forward, drawn to the dark energy leaking from every corner of the mine. Klein coldly explains, they will consume her slowly over an entire week. Pale screams in horror as the swarm devours her alive. Klein watches with total indifference, calmly thanking her for being such a useful tool. One single eye peers out frantically from the tide of bugs before being completely consumed. With the necromancer finished, the duo finally leave the mine, but back at the Rhinland estate, the shockwaves are already starting to hit. Trust me, you and I aren't ready for this. The Duke just got a terrifying report. Stick with me here. It looks like the Empire has been secretly unleashing necromancers in the north, and the Holy Order is completely ignoring it. Next, we see Klein standing tall before his father, ready to report everything that went down in the mines. He confirms the grim truth, detailing how entire villages vanish while local nobles are too busy playing politics to actually do anything. The Duke listens closely before ordering his butler, Berkman, to dispatch the night guard to the exact locations Klein pointed out. Now, he looks at his son with newfound respect, praising him for his absolutely incredible feat. Klein, staying humble in his new identity, gives all the credit straight to Dunley. He decides to hide the necromancy aspect for now, knowing that Dunley harbors a deep, burning hatred for the dark arts. The Duke stands up, feeling that Klein deserves far more than mere words. Our hero watches, completely stunned by his father's next move. Right in front of him is the official badge of the Rhineland Knights. Ignoring any objections, the Duke declares Klein will start as an apprentice knight. Klein accepts, pinning the wolf emblem onto his uniform. This step is absolutely crucial for his Grand Master plan. Pleased with his son's progress, the Duke finally dismisses him. With permission granted, Klein slowly steps out of the Duke's office. The heavy wooden doors slam shut behind him, marking the end of one massive challenge and the start of another. Berkman highlights the insane feat of fighting over 70 undead and a necromancer, but the Duke reacts with a mysterious order: write a letter to his brother. Now, check this out. The absolute genius his brother spent a lifetime searching for has been right here under their noses. Meanwhile, Klein wanders down the quiet hallways, reflecting on his brand new title as an apprentice knight. He knows the night quarters are a heavily restricted military zone for outsiders, and that gives him an absolutely brilliant idea. He smirks, realizing that annoying priest, Garrison, who still highly suspects him, won't be able to bug him anymore. Quietly, he renews his solemn vow to restore the Rhineland family back to its former, legendary glory. As he plans his next move, a tiny figure dashes toward him at full speed. It's his personal maid, Aaron, tackling him like a literal cannonball. The brutal impact makes his spine pop with a terrifying crack, sending Klein crashing down in pure agony. Klein jokingly asks if she ran out of cookies. Aaron, face covered in crumbs, glares back, furious about something way worse than a missing snack. Clutching his throbbing back, Klein can only stare up at his maid in absolute disbelief. Weakly, he tells her to just grab more cookies from the kitchen, but Aaron is carrying much bigger, shocking news. I know what you're thinking, things were going too smoothly. She warns him that Priest Garrison is here, instantly destroying his peace. The one person he desperately wanted to avoid has come straight for him, reminding Klein of Garrison's terrifying strength when he killed Dalton. Garrison is definitely not someone to mess with, and his suspicions run deep. Klein's brief moment of victory is cut short by a sudden voice. Hearing a familiar voice ask if his mission went well, he turns around to face his worst living nightmare. Towering right behind him, the terrifying priest calmly announces he has been patiently waiting for the young master, Klein Rhineland. A wild search begins as servants scream his name. Multiple men scour the entire estate, desperately trying to find any trace of Klein. The search party reports their total failure. The young master is absolutely nowhere to be found. One guard worries since Klein's sacred purification ritual is starting soon. unable to believe he would just vanish like this. But Klein hasn't vanished. He's perched high up in a tree, successfully hiding from everyone searching for him. He winces, remembering when Garrison promised forgiveness only to strip him naked and hang him as punishment. He's not falling for that again. He watches as the search party finally decides to check inside the mansion, giving him a much-needed moment of quiet peace. Night falls over the forest under a blanket of stars. Hours later, Klein is still up in the tree, fast asleep on a thick branch. He wakes up gasping, drooling, and screaming in panic. "No, Garrison, no!" Looking around, he wonders how long he slept, assuming the annoying search party gave up and went home hours ago. Deciding it is safe to return, he climbs down and lands softly on the ground, but his relief instantly vanishes when he realizes he's not alone. He has landed right in the middle of a family of northern gray bears, massive, deadly predators native to this icy region. Unable to use his secret necromancy, Klein knows all too well that he's nothing more than a tasty midnight snack to these beasts. Huddled up and shivering in the freezing, pitch-black darkness, he realizes his only option is to wait patiently for them to leave. His struggles, past and present, feel like an endless cycle of running away. He tightens his fist in absolute bitter frustration. Once again, helplessness rules his life. But trust me, you and I are about to see everything change as he realizes he's being carried. It's Garrison, carrying him over his shoulder like a sack of potatoes. The terrifying priest looks at him and asks if he's finally awake. "All right, you and I are diving into pure madness." Klein thinks he froze to death in hell, but Garrison just laughs. The priest explains he found him knocked out up in a tree, but Klein is totally lost and asks about the bears. Glancing to the side, he sees the massive beasts lying on the dirt, knocked cold with huge lumps on their heads. Garrison cheerfully brags that he took care of them. Klein, burning up with fever and absolutely furious, demands to be put down, refusing to be carried by his torturer. He just can't understand why Garrison, the very man who wanted him dead, was now saving his life. The priest merely stares back with an unreadable face, looks up at the moon, and gives a cryptic reply. He says, "Stars don't create their own darkness, they simply shine wherever they happen to be." It is the same for young souls who can't yet tell good from evil, calling it the start of a brand new path. Klein is left utterly baffled by this sudden philosophical speech. He bitterly snaps back, asking how he can say that after waterboarding him so much. Garrison's cold glare hardens. "Now, pay close attention," he warns, "that if this kid ever turns to pure darkness or becomes the Arch-Commander, he'll end him himself." Back inside the grand hall of the Rhineland estate, the tense standoff continues between the priest and the young master, who claims his absence was due to official church business. He reveals a curious gift from an old friend, pulling out a cross-shaped flask filled with a strange red liquid. Klein panics instantly. He recognizes the ectoplasm, capable of storing spiritual energy, and fears his own magic might be trapped inside. Garrison begins recounting the day Klein was ambushed in the deep forest by a dangerous necromancer. But Garrison stepped in and pulverized the attacker with a single brutal strike. He steps forward, his voice deep and menacing, revealing that the ectoplasm used that day didn't just trace one necromancer, but two. A cold dread washes over Klein. Even though Garrison speaks calmly, the ancient necromancer king, sealed inside Klein, senses intense bloodlust. His battle-hardened instincts are screaming pure danger. The man standing right before him is a true monster, a predator of the absolute worst kind. Klein rapidly calculates his options, doubting he can survive a clash with such an opponent at his current weak level. He considers copying his moves, but quickly rejects it. To copy a skill, he'd have to survive seeing it first. A total impossibility against a beast like Garrison. So, fighting is definitely out of the question. I know what you're thinking. And yes, Garrison stares him down, giving him a strict ultimatum to use necromancy right now. If it is just basic reanimation, he'll only write a simple report for the order. But if it's true soul-manipulating necromancy, the kind used by that person, he will not escape execution. A bitter smirk crosses his face as he thinks about this priest who waterboards him daily in the name of purification. It's funny, because Garrison reminds him of someone else. Klein admits he didn't get it before, but now he understands his brand of justice. Klein clenches his fist tight, boldly declaring that he will be the one deciding his own destiny from now on. He is done running away. Garrison's expression turns incredibly dark. Seeing that Klein won't cooperate, he has no choice but to force him, launching a devastating, heavy punch. Klein's mind screams at him to dodge at all costs. He just needs to avoid this single, lethal strike. With a burst of speed, he rolls frantically to the side, dodging the fist by mere millimeters as Garrison watches in shock. Klein smiles triumphantly. He actually did it. Meanwhile, the servants in the hallway scream in terror at the massive crash. They watch in sheer disbelief, screaming that the priest himself just attacked the young master of the house. Seizing his chance, Klein reaches for his sword to launch a surprise counter, but his hand hits an empty scabbard. He freezes in shock, his blade is gone. Suddenly, a voice from above asks if he's looking for something. It is Garrison, effortlessly holding the sword before tossing it aside, mocking the idea of a necromancer using a blade. A heavy shiver down his spine confirms that Garrison has every intention of killing him right here and now. The priest coldly tells him he won't need weapons and throws another punch. A blinding light erupts on impact. The entire hall is swallowed by the blast, and the very foundation of the building trembles from the shockwave. The violent shockwave blows the servants back, leaving them unable to comprehend the sheer destructive power of the strike. As the thick dust clears, Garrison remains standing calmly amidst the smoking rubble. With his fist clenched and eyes locked on Klein's spot, a new armed figure rises, and trust me, you and I need to see what happens next. Look at this. The seventh Duke of the Rinland family, Henkel Rinland, demands a clear explanation from Garrison before cutting him down with his sword.